Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, 13th. Um, yeah, I'm starting late again due to insomnia, and in part, I would say, due to the fact that most of yesterday was focused around installing new internet at my house, which theoretically, looking at speed tests, assuming that my ISP isn't just going to screw around, should be a massive, massive improvement. Like, massive. Uh, I don't mind saying that my old internet service provider was charging me nearly double what I allegedly am going to be charged now. Well, I'll have to wait until I see a bill. To get considerably worse download. I was getting sometimes up to about 200 megabits per second, bits, not bytes, on my old ISP download. Now I'm getting up to realistically somewhere around 375 megabits per second. So nearly a doubling for theoretically considerably less money. But where the difference really highlights is the upload. My old ISP was giving me maybe 10 megabits per second upload. Maybe. But in reality, when you get to the quality of service and how it normally would average out, you're talking 7.5 megabits per second. Now I'm getting almost what feels like a one-to-one connection of 375 megabits per second. So you are talking 50 times the upload, which that may change a lot. Certainly, all of a sudden uploading videos may, instead of being all weekend to YouTube, may be just something that happens very, very quickly. Does that really affect scheduling the videos? Not really. So that is still an issue. We got solo missions today because I chose for solo missions, which hopefully that will work. So we need to just play Shadowcraft, or Havencraft will probably just play Shadowcraft. So this could be like a massive improvement on the internet speed. Great. That's great. There is a possibility that it's a shared connection, but in all fairness, so was my previous internet service provider. And I think you definitely do see, depending on the neighborhood you live in and how many other people around you are sharing your network connections, you seem to always see that slow down unless you have a true dedicated service line, which old DSL technology would not give you high speeds at all. So you would have to have a basically dedicated service business line by modern standards to guarantee as much bandwidth as possible, and you don't need that much, really. I don't need that much. But yeah, there are still some caveats. My new ISP is horrific already in advertising. They were terrible about advertising to me even before I was a customer, and I suspect that they probably won't change much. Maybe now that I'm actually a business a client of theirs, they'll stop advertising to me so much. But like, yeah, they definitely tried to upsell everything: phone lines, security systems, they tried to kind of replace cell phone service with landlines, which is a ridiculous thought. TV also, of course. And this is allegedly an introductory price, so it may triple next year, and so I may enjoy really good internet for like 1 year and then swoop back to a cheaper service, because I am absolutely just looking for cheapness. I'm not really looking for speed, well, although it's nice. My new ISP came with a Wi-Fi 6, which is 802.11ax, which compared to the previous version 802.11ac claims to be 75% more efficient. It did, just out of the box, feel like it was a slightly snappier, slightly faster internet connection for Wi-Fi. So if you are shopping, I would say go for Wi-Fi 6, but actually you should probably be going for Wi-Fi 6E, because the 6Es are branching out into the 6 gigahertz frequency spectrum, which hasn't been touched up until this point, and it is always this race to have your devices take advantage for the longest amount of time of the empty spectrum frequencies, compared to fighting with all your neighbors who are still using either 5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz in particular being incredibly flooded with Wi-Fi signal. And they even didn't give me any trouble whatsoever. I heavily thought that the installer was going to give me trouble potentially and say, no, we can only install it on exterior walls, and we're not going to help you move all the other hard lines, since my entire house is wired, and so it has 4 wires that go to 4 hubs in 4 different places, spreading out a wired network. Yeah, I suspected there might be a lot of pushback and not desire to want to help there, but no, they said okay, and gave me no guff at all as far as putting my Wi-Fi router now in the middle of my house in an air-conditioned, dust-free, or at least less dust environment than where it was in the past in the garage, where that was not air-conditioned and that was very dusty environment. The only weird thing is that the installer did not use my Wi-Fi router, my Wi-Fi router, which is the DDWRT and heavily programmed, and just used the equipment that it came with. And it was very difficult to get their equipment to just not do anything and just connect to my equipment. There's a setting called Cascaded Router, which is not what you're supposed to use. What you're supposed to do is do IP pass-through mode. But you still have to have a DHCP server running on their equipment, and I had turned that off, so I had to start over. So what theoretically should have just been that you plug it in and it works, ideally, was more of a 40-minute attempt of trying to figure out how to configure things and then turn off the Wi-Fi on their equipment and just use the Wi-Fi on my equipment, which, yes, is slower, but it doesn't matter. If anything, their new equipment showed me better frequencies to set my Wi-Fi equipment to get the settings a little bit better, because I've kind of had a long-running problem of trying to figure out what actually works on my router. And once there is a DDWRT capable or OpenRWRT capable router that is an AX, I'll probably want to switch fairly quickly over to that, but maybe not. Like it's not like I have any devices that would do 6E, Wi-Fi 6E, and I don't know if I have any devices that will even do AX. In reality, I have maybe 4 devices that do 5 gigahertz in general, and then there's about 12 Wi-Fi devices that are still 2.4 gigahertz only. and they're not the kind of devices that you can just flippantly replace. Pretty much there is no kind of device that you can just flippantly replace. So yeah, if I can put that off as long as possible and wait till a Wi-Fi 7 or a Wi-Fi 8 comes out before getting a new router, that would be great. Particularly since I bought a new version of the exact same version of that router just last year.
Come now, let us play together.
So now my Wi-Fi router is set up and doing its thing, probably a little bit better. And yeah, we've had no drop frames, so it does look like the streaming is going to work.
Do not seek what is not there.
And I think that's all I can really talk about as far as the accountability section. I am still playing Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, moving through that game fairly quickly. It's frankly not much of a game. It feels like it was a less focused on game during its development in favor of, I bet, the Lord of the Rings Lego games. It seems to be about right there. But yeah, I am not having micro stuttering. I am in the hub world occasionally having what is just a slight hitch when a new character loads in, because the hub world is just a bunch of people loading in. There is weirdness certainly around Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, but I don't think it has so much to do with an overall issue as it has to do with the fact that they just didn't polish it very much. Little things like the studs in the pause menu don't spin. I could not blame that on anything other than just bad programming. And it crashing when I leave it paused and then turn off all my monitors and turn them back on. Like, that sucks, yes, but that's also almost to be expected. Something like that would happen when you mess with the visual settings. So that's easily dismissed. The main part is that in the actual gameplay, I haven't run into any major problems. I did manage to glitch in the boss fight. I reached an area I shouldn't have been allowed to reach, defeated some enemies before they reached the area where they should have been defeated, and then I couldn't beat the level and had to exit out and start over again. And so that kind of sucked. But that's pretty much it. Alright, being a Wednesday, we'll want to try and go through all the games, but I may not want to do it just because it's late. So here we have a game called Nicotopia Skyfall, which an art style of little cat humanoid characters might work as the idea for a game, but I don't think there really is a game so much. It seems almost like a simulation. A game where you're just trying to protect these cats from getting shot by these balls. It's $2.69 early access. They're calling it an action real-time strategy, which is maybe not the best descriptor. So yeah, I'll have to say no to Nicotopia. Let's see. Halo Infinite Xbox Series X console is available for pre-order at GameStop today. if you're interested in a skin and a custom Xbox. I really question if there was ever actually a point where any of these collectible special skin machines had really any major value. I feel like maybe the Pikachu Game Boy Advanced maybe has a slightly higher value to collectors nowadays than just a standard Game Boy Advance, but other than that, I'm mostly leaning towards the thought that these custom versions are
The time for perennial prayer has come.
sold in high enough numbers that they would never really have that much scarcity. Which is probably a good thing, because you would want to just be able to ensure somebody who really wants this pays only a minimal amount of extra for it, and not that scalpers are going to hold it in some anticipation that it'll be increase in value. Particularly, you run into the problem of consoles not maintaining their value 5-10 years down the line. Nobody's going to really want to play an Xbox Series X if there's a Series X2, 3, or 4, which I guess that's what they would name them next, is just put a number after it. Yeah, if there's a new console and there's backward compatibility, it becomes really questionable why anybody would buy just a Series X with that skin. And unlike the days of having an official Nintendo like Pikachu Game Boy Advanced, which I'm fairly certain that did exist, there are plenty of skinning services where you could buy a skin and a wrap and put it on a box like the Xbox very easily. It might be slightly more difficult to get a skin or a wrap that would go on a PlayStation 5, which has kind of unique angles, but not that much more difficult.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Ubisoft is investigating the wrong PlayStation 4 Far Cry 6 versions in Europe. They say they're investigating it, which is to say they're not really doing anything or admitting guilt yet. We'll see how long they decide to investigate.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Now this guy only makes sense with this guy. Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says the Alan Wake remaster has been rated for Nintendo Switch again. This was now the ESRB. Previously it was the Brazilian rating system. So I think it's fairly obvious that an Alan Wake remaster is coming to the Switch, which I suppose it will be slightly interesting to see if they embrace using the Joy-Con to control the flashlight in Alan Wake, or if it is still going to be very standard controls. It may be both, actually. I saw a iFixit's teardown of the new OLED version of the Nintendo Switch. They showed that there were some pretty big changes to make this hinge work, and they've changed some of the internals, changed kind of how the speakers are, and they changed the memory SD card slot reader, but they didn't really improve it. They were kind of surprised you can take off the screen if you apply heat and a suction cup to it. They thought it might very well just crack. They mentioned that there's a film that's a protective anti-shatter film you're not supposed to take off on the OLED version. There is a better, newer chip in it, but I don't think it's such a newer chip that you would expect that you shouldn't have any expectations that it can run any games any better. I imagine it is a newer chip that is simply I imagine it's a newer chip that has been clocked down to be on par with the older chips. But yeah, the main thing that caught my eye is, while they said they couldn't really see any improvements to the joystick, they said that the rails and the slots that the Joy-Cons lock into have been reshaped and are much better and less wobbly and loose when you slide a Joy-Con into the holders, which, yeah, I guess that's a nice improvement, certainly, that you can feel. Otherwise, most people have reviewed the OLED screen and just said, yeah, the screen's a lot better, but that's kind of it. Video Game Chronicles article here says the Switch OLED has comfortably outpaced the Lite's sales in the UK. It was 70% of all Switch sales last week, so it is definitely just going to, I think, be the de facto version that people buy going forward, unless they are just hard up on trying to get that extra $50.
Faith is an expensive business. No, the smiles
Do
are
this.
not free.
Finally, it comes to this.
And I guess you do this. Let's actually be a little more careful though.
Take your victory.
Video Game Chronicles says Metroid Dread has triggered the franchise sales boost across multiple platforms, which really just highlights how badly they planned for the release of Metroid Dread and how badly they've handled the Metroid series. If people are having to go back to the Wii U, 3DS, and Switch, previous version of the Switch, to play the old Metroid series. I don't know if there actually is an older Metroid game that is on the Switch though. I guess not. Probably Metroid Dread is on the Switch, and then several previous Metroid games are probably available for the 3DS and the Wii U. And I haven't been into a GameStop in a very long time, but I would suspect that your odds are not guaranteed that you could go into a GameStop and get a Wii U or a 3DS, and if you even could get them, it probably wouldn't be worth your effort to buy a Wii U or a 3DS and to play the old Metroid games. Clearly the old Metroid games should have been ported to the Switch. Everything should have been ported to the Switch at this point. Every 3DS game that you can possibly figure out a way to put on the Switch should have been available.
Victorious.
Like, I know the 3DS has 2 screens, but it wouldn't be insane to map a button that just pauses the game and switches to the other screen. And I don't think there was pretty much ever a point where you had a game that needed you to rapid fire switch between the top and bottom screen anyways. Okay.
The real battle begins.
Video Game Chronicles says Call of Duty Warzone's new anti-cheat technology has been revealed. It's called Ricochet. It'll debut in Vanguard. Yeah, okay. I'm sure Call of Duty Warzone fans probably like the idea of an anti-cheat, assuming people think there's too much cheating in Call of Duty, which I would assume at least the Call of Duty creators believe to be true. Disney apparently is teasing a Star Wars video game product reveal. Bring the bounty home. New Star Wars products are being announced weekly until the end of the year, apparently. I would not be surprised if this is a pinball game, because you have this big round circle here, and then you have kind of this round circle here and here, and I suppose this is supposed to represent like a visor or goggles that are used in the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is just some kind of Android game or an Android pinball game, to be specific. I would suspect it is probably not in any way a huge event. Oh, maybe this is just the logo for all the announcements, so there might be something around that too. Yeah. Week 10 has a video game controller here, so you seemingly have to wait till the week 10. And I guess it's the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm on week 9. You'd think that there would be potentially a little bit more of a focus around that, but I don't think Disney cares about the history of Lucasfilm, so they probably won't emphasize that as much.
This is where I truly shine.
Let us conclude.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady?
These guys don't want to die. So maybe looking at this more, maybe it isn't pinball focused, and they've just gone with this kind of circle theme for some other reason. I can't believe I lost there, but I don't know why I would really be that surprised. We got some progress on the battle pass at the least. I suspect a lot of these Star Wars things that are announced are going to be, they say it's toys, collectibles, books, apparel, small things, not really big things. This would be big news if we didn't already know that these lawsuits take forever. Google has decided to countersue Epic Games for Fortnite breach of contract. Google claims that sidestepping the Google Play fees led to unjust enrichment and security issues.
Oh yeah, I smell trouble.
Which... Yeah, this is the less talked about part where Google Play also removed Fortnite when Fortnite decided to put sidestep the Google Play fees elements. If anything, this might very well be the difference between Apple knowing that it was going to eventually have to be in a lawsuit with Epic, and Google being less intelligent to realize that it was going to end up that way and that they were going to force the issue, and thus their lawyers had to take some more time. Arguably too, this may just be because of the pandemic and the courts just being incredibly congested, and they never moved fast, but they move even slower now. And Google's lawyers can probably see every motion and filing and see how it's received and make adjustments, so that they're I want to say topping from the bottom, if that's a phrase, but that would be probably the worst phrase to use there. A better phrase would probably be, it looks like they're playing a second offense while letting Apple be the leader and take the higher risks in the lawsuits. So it is very possible, although I heavily suspect that Epic's going to fail on most counts, if not all counts. It is somewhat possible, though, that we see Google's lawsuit go much smoother and be much more successful, simply because it can make a better arguments and lean on the precedent of previous people. And this is how lawyers always work, is that they don't want to have to make a precedent-setting case if they're not being funded to the max. They want to lean on previous precedent-setting cases so that they have a higher chance of success. And lawyers are much happier maintaining their record of success than they are going off on the risk of losing to set new precedent. In most cases, some lawyers obviously are passionate about things and trying to make a name for themselves, and are willing to take higher risks. But generally, as a story, like, you don't even have to read the paragraphs below this, because it just doesn't matter. It's gonna be a long time before this lawsuit is settled. And in the meantime, Fortnite is as dead as Google and Apple could make it, and Fortnite has not figured out some magical way to counter that or adjust for that.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Let's see. Don't want to play that. Can't play anything else. Here we have a game on Steam called Evolution Moon Warfare. I think we had already talked about a game like this.
The resplendent
I don't know if this is the same game or not. I probably went too far back. English, free to play, early access, nothing of real interest. Here we have one that's all in Chinese,
again.
which looks like a real-time strategy Chinese game, free to play with in-app purchases, Chinese only. Looks like a mobile phone game. Here we have one called Wingseat Dream, which I'm fairly certain this is new, which obviously is just a Flappy Bird clone, but not terrible for a Flappy Bird clone. It doesn't look exactly like Flappy Bird, but also you really can't make a clone of such a simplistic game and expect anybody to be interested in it. It's English, it's 89 cents, so obviously it's going to be a no.
This is how you do fireworks.
Okay.
You were done for.
Kaboom! No handiwork needed.
Attack, heal, I guess. And we'll just put this on the field anyways.
Time for perennial prayer has come.
This next game is interesting in that it is all in Asian characters. It's tagged hentai sexual content. The hentai tag really doesn't even get mentioned or used as much as you'd think it would. And it's an actual top-down twin-stick shooter, like, defense game. And I suspect what you're trying to do is keep enemies outside your circle of influence, and the more you do, then the anime girl image slides downward. which, while that doesn't sound like immediately the greatest game concept ever, it is way better than doing just a standard jigsaw puzzle game. Now, arguably, you might question whether high action games are what you want with hentai imagery, or do you want a slow action jigsaw puzzle experience so that people can just take their time and stare at the pictures? Because if these pictures are truly interesting to you, they're actively, in a game like this, acting as a distraction. They're changing the background, they're drawing your attention away. You could easily die before finishing the level. But this is also Chinese only, 69 cents. So yeah, I bet there's really not any nudity in this game because it's Chinese only, and it really seems to kind of miss the mark while trying something new, because of the censorship and issues of Chinese release games. Which, the censorship issues, while not 100% directly related to video games, at the moment, the censorship issue should be mentioned again, because I saw just an article yesterday or this morning that says China is on the verge of outlawing all news reporting that is not directly funded by the government. So 100% control of the news that people receive. 100% censored, controlled journalism. Which, yeah, that's, I mean, literally there's not an action that gets reported in the West that China does that isn't just like the next step in the playbook of being the next Nazi Germany, the next, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic there. They literally are just following the playbooks of like the Stalin and other dictators who totally removed all freedoms one by one. And this puts any country that claims to love freedom or that wants to try and maintain some level of freedom in the world, because frankly China's so big and powerful that if we let them turn all of China into a totalitarian dictatorship, we'll see they will just continuously expand. What's interesting here is the video is zoomed in and zoomed out with an effect when you beat the level. It puts any country, regardless of how much they love or hate war, in this bad position where a preemptive strike has to start being considered. And World War III potentially is going to have to happen to do something about China, because their military is just too big. Unless people just can get really lucky and the current president and communist leadership of China just imploded, and there was just a major revolution in mainland China. There's very few scenarios where we aren't going to just have to, some country, probably the United States, is going to have to just actively engage in a modern warfare that none has ever seen before. Unless another pandemic happens or something like that and it severely cripples their military, which, yeah, that might happen. Like, I wouldn't have believed something like that would have happened before COVID-19 happened, but yeah, that might happen, certainly.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
And yes, of course, you can try the normal things of just maximum pressure campaigns on China, but China's ability to make itself so incredibly intertwined with world economy. Excuse me, I ate something really salty and I'm apparently allergic to too much salt. Unless all people around the world stop using China as the manufacturer of all products, and there's just a lot of soft influence that China has managed to generate and gain, in part because of the United States and other rich countries outsourcing, which I'm going to get into a huge political rant here, and this conversation started with China just taking direct control over the news media, but it is a matter of national security, and nobody wants to admit it, that outsourcing be 100% or nearly 100% outlawed in every country. Like, or at least in so incredibly regulated. But even if you let outsourcing happen in the United States to places like Canada and Mexico, there's just not enough oversight to then not see how you could outsource the jobs that are technically in Canada and Mexico to then China or India or another country. We're not really concerned too much about India at the moment. India very potentially could be the first trigger that starts World War III with China. But yeah, if outsourcing was never considered as a thing, 50, 60 years ago, it would have been considered incredibly unpatriotic to outsource, and now it's just the standard business way of doing business, and as much people now will even claim it's xenophobic to say, hey, we're not going to let jobs go to other countries, and it's not particularly just xenophobia driving that direction. China often leans on the claim that people are being xenophobic when it's not that at all. Like, I think it's fairly obvious I have quite the love for Japan, and I am more than happy to see a Middle Eastern game made, even in a country that is a Muslim theocracy. I'm more than happy to see Indian games made from India. I'd like to see some more Native American and First Nations games. I'm more than happy to see any European games, any African games. I'd love to see more African continent games and South American games. So it's hardly xenophobia to say China is a problem when all the other countries, like Russia's also a problem, sure, but
Ladies and gentle ghosts, follow me.
Russia's attempt to acquire countries is heavily limited down to taking over like the North Pole, Ukraine, and that's pretty much it. Meddle in the Middle East as much as the United States meddles in the Middle East. But Russia would have to effectively be trying to take parts of North China and the Ukraine and all of the oceans to the east of it, and like Alaska and Japan to be on the same level of just imperialism that China is doing. But yeah, the maximum pressure campaign can't be really a UN resolution, because China pretty much controls most of the UN, and the UN is incredibly ineffectual, designed to be ineffectual. So we would need to see places like the United States and other countries just stop outsourcing the manufacturing of products, which means we need more chip manufacturing plants outside of China in particular, and we need mines that can give us rare earth minerals outside of China. The United States could fairly easily create the need for a lot more jobs overnight with just major embargoes. Are people going to work in rare earth mineral mines? Maybe, maybe not. It would be an adjustment, to say the least. The United States could easily get a lot of cheap labor if we could help Ecuador and some of the South American countries, if we can actually help them. But the only way I think they get help is at the cost of their own government being overthrown and them becoming territories of the United States. Which, at a certain point, that's literally the argument of we're helping the Africans by enslaving them, and that's basically what it would almost be, is that we would take over countries and make territories and then let corporations abuse and underpay those people at the expense of fixing their system, which in fact corporations are the cause of the turmoil in Ecuador, it sounds like, from what I can tell. And so exploiting people while somewhat helping them is not really the best way to do things, but it is kind of the standard method of operating. Okay, so what we're going to check here is I'm going to go into the solo and do this single puzzles, and hopefully that counts. If it doesn't, if these quests don't count towards the daily solo quests, then that's gonna really suck. I think I played a little bit off screen, and so now we have 7,000 to go, and I'm just playing this middle tier character. He's easy enough to win, so I'm sticking with him. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Ghost Tokyo. We're supposed to be talking about video games, and instead I'm talking about politics, which is always something people should strive to avoid. Surviving in a randomly generated city, fighting zombies. There's not enough heads-up display and polish here, but this doesn't sound like a terrible idea. A randomly generated roguelike survival game, making it more of a realistic version of Minecraft, because effectively that's what this is. It's just it has a weird top-down perspective to it, and it's hyper-realistic. Yeah, $2.99 English only. It's strange it's English only. This definitely feels like this would have been a Japanese language game being set in Tokyo. Yeah, you might, even if you had the development polish on it, beat something like Minecraft if with that concept. But I have this feeling that there's a reason why we haven't seen this succeed so far, and I can't quite put my thumb on it, which is bad for a video game critic. I should be able to form an opinion regardless of how unbaked and stupid the opinion turns out to be. But yeah, why do games like Dying Light have everything hand generated as far as the location of people? In all fairness, a lot of games have hand-generated level design that that is originally random generated and then polished, and so they don't just start from scratch anyways. Speed Tree is kind of a great example of that, where it just randomly algorithmically places trees, and then you can adjust from that initial placement whether you want a tree in that place or not. I suppose when you have a game like Dying Light, you're given specific levels and quests, and because of that you need to be able to playtest and make sure the quests work. But yeah, if it were randomly generated, then the quest would feel fairly random also. And so that might be part of the limitation there. And it is kind of shocking that there isn't a quest mode in a game like Minecraft where you are given random quests to kill like 50 zombies every now and then. You would think it would make a lot of sense for the villagers to come up to you and say, hey, do this quest and we will reward you. But yeah, there's actually nothing like that.
You crossed the line.
So yeah, it does feel like there's a gap in the market for a more realistic. It would probably want to be a third-person perspective or first-person perspective game. I wouldn't describe it as like a shooter, because that's not really what it is. Would be. And if you did make a roguelike and it's randomly designed, you probably would want some bosses to show up and some roguelite elements to also be in a game like that. Minecraft has the dragon at the end, but that's kind of the only boss. Everything else you have to kind of spawn, and you can infinitely spawn all the bosses to get more resources. Minecraft is so built around the resources that if you were trying to make a direct competitor to that, there would be some considerations around that idea that might not work in a more hyper-realistic world. I think you probably wouldn't just be mining minerals, you'd instead be scavenging parts for gears and copper wire, things like that. Instead of looking for pure copper, you'd be looking for pure copper wire. That would let you potentially have some NPC characters maybe smelting down the things you're scavenging. I don't know if 2021 is the time to come out with a game that would be a post-apocalyptic survival game, but yeah, that there definitely is a story there, and a game there that you could have. Do this, and the turn. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Grim Knights 2, which says it's a colony sim, which I guess that's what it is. It looks a little too pixely though, not particularly interesting in the background. There's just a lot of dark blue happening here. $4.79, English only. Let's see. So there's an allied character with ward, play that. Deal 4 damage.
Your shining faith will carry you.
I've got to take a break.
My dragon and I are one.
Here we have a game on Steam called Back Again, which
What a dim light.
it looks like it's an asset flip platforming game. The black and red art aesthetic might work, but there needs to be something more of a game here. Here it just looks really creepy. It does almost have like the angle of a Silent Hill thing where you've just got these creepy mannequins wandering around. Maybe that's a character you play as also, although it does kind of look like more you're just in first person perspective. 99 cents English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, doesn't look like there's much of a game here, unfortunately. Here we have a game called Evolution of War. I forgot I was playing single player, so I don't really have a time limit. Yeah, this looks like a kind of low effort game full of dinosaurs and tanks and bombers and dragons just all over the place, which you'd have to have much more polish to sell me on that idea. That idea could work, but it takes a lot of effort. $1.69 English, Spain, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazil. Yeah, the problem definitely comes down to the thought that you can make all of those different
I've got
and
to
very
take a break.
dispergent elements look good and make sense together, and that takes a ton of work. Even Time Splitters doesn't, I think, really handle that as well as it should.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Next we have a game on Steam called Conquest, which looks like it's a dice-based strategy game. They're calling it real-time strategy. I don't think it really is real-time strategy. I'm not seeing a single screenshot that would tell me anything is happening in real time. It's free, online PvP, English, French, Italian, German, Spain, Spanish. I don't know why you'd really want to play this, though. Or I don't know how they're going to make any money from this. It does have an iOS Android version, and it is polished enough, so if this is just the PC version because this was a really popular game on iOS and Android, I can certainly understand that, but I don't really suspect this is that popular on iOS and Android, and I wonder if the iOS and Android versions have in-app purchases or cost money. And they're looking at Steam as just a advertising platform for the other things.
Go away!
Okay. If I attack this here, it'll die. Is there anything more we want to do?
Come on, smile!
I think you just do that.
I have fallen.
Then we'll just play that.
No.
And then we'll hit
your
this
smiles
and
are
hit
not
that.
free.
And then...
You follow behind.
Oh, the follower with the ward that came into play after this guy would have had to have been there at the end of the turn. I didn't realize that.
You're in good hands.
There we go.
Hear the dragons roar.
Let's see. Gamatsu says Super Robot Wars 30, Primer Part 3 execution gameplay is now available to see if you're interested in that. I guess it's 30th anniversary. You'd think a game called Super Robot Wars would be a lot more interesting to look at, but you can tell it is a positional turn-based strategy type game. Very Japanese. Yeah, the idea that a new generation of Japanese people aren't still in love with slow-moving games with a lot of strategy and a lot of dialogue and a lot of slow gameplay, I think is wrong. The next generation of games are more interested, slightly more interested in showing an anime character than in the newer anime styles, and I'll give it that much. But yeah, compared to like a JRPG, this is not that different. 2 damage to everything. I'd do this. I think what you do is you do this, and then you do this.
The greater your sin, the crispier I make you.
And then you end the turn. Let's see. Kumatsu says the 1990s China set pixel graphics story game The Heroes Around Me has been announced for PC. You have quite a difference in animation style here. Like here you have a chibi anime character, and here you have a fairly anatomically correct male character, and then fairly anatomically correct dog character. And this certainly gets into the danger, because unless this is specifically the father and the daughter, there is a very high age gap there. Let's see if any of the screenshots change that. Yeah, it kind of makes it feel like these are just kids being taken to school by their parents. So maybe this is literally a father and a daughter. Yeah, it definitely feels like it is a father and daughter. So crisis averted. So the question comes down to, what kind of game is this really? Seems like it's probably a pixely life sim game where you're taking care of your daughter, and I guess it is a different spin on the daughter raising simulator type game or adventure game. Doesn't seem like there's anything, any big challenge here. Oh, I guess if I'd read the subtitle here, a game about a father giving his sick daughter a happy childhood. So there's a little bit of tragedy there, but yeah. The problem with a game like that is that there's that high chance of it being fairly preachy. There was that game that I played a couple years ago called Always Sometimes Monsters or Sometimes Always Monsters. There's two different, there's a sequel that is the exact opposite of the first name. And yeah, that game was very preachy and kind of badly written, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were going to have a similar scenario with that game. But it does look interesting, so I would potentially, when it comes out on Steam, if it comes out on Steam, put it on the fall list and see what people have to say about it. Let's see, a game called Gate of Nightmares launches October 26th in Japan, which this looks like a JRPG, but not in one of the bigger, more recognizable series. Here you have your standard comic book contortion of bodies in I say comic books because I think comic books are most known for doing this, where you have a face that is facing in generally this way. Her chin and neck is facing just general direction, but she's completely turned to a 90 degrees so you can see side boob and cleavage, and yet then her spine is completely disconnected so that she is facing in her hips are facing in this general angle. So you've got like head going this way, torso going this way, hips going this way so you can see her butt. It's like you, even if you were a contortionist, that angle is not believable. But yeah, it happens. Like, that is definitely what you come from a, I guess, I wish there was a better word than male gaze, but that is definitely art done from a male gaze. Whereas in contrast here, you have the main character just mostly his entire body is facing this general direction and his head is tilted towards, looking towards the sword which he's pointing with. And yeah, none of the other characters are particularly twisted. Even the little fairy girl, all looking in that general direction. Everybody on the thing is generally looking in that direction. Yeah. Male gaze is kind of an unfair phrase, but I don't know if there's a better way to say it without just adding more words and making it more complicated. The actual game here looks very interesting and fairly well animated, and there is always this argument that playing a game that isn't part of a long-running Final Fantasy series might be more attractive than trying to play a long-running Final Fantasy style JRPG that goes on forever. So this might be the beginning of a new series too, as a possibility. This also might be apparently it's going to be mobile games only, which the graphics on mobile games are starting to look fairly good, so it's getting harder to tell. The people who've created Hiro Mashima and Jin Fujisawa may be very recognizable names in Japan. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose, to see if that game comes out to the West.
I've got to take a break.
There we go. I wanted to mention this. The Shin Megami Tensei 5 daily demon has still been going on, and Gamatsu has been talking about it. They've been putting out a video for a different demon every single day for a very long time now. It's been, well, if they're up to 149, you're basically saying 5 months that every day they've been putting out one. This one is a demon sitting on a toilet, which, yeah. These are just like single, less than a minute videos that they're showing demons that you're summoning, I guess, or the enemy is summoning. Which, yeah, I have been intentionally skipping over these. If you run into demons like this and in Shin Megami Tensei 5, you probably aren't going to fight them that much if there's 150 different varieties out there. It seems like you capture the demons at some point and use them yourself. And pretty much, yeah, he's a joke character. But yeah, I have been intentionally skipping the coverage of this, even though it has been talked about, because there's really no good reason to talk about 150 different demons in a single game. And that really shows the difference of Gamatsu versus anybody else. Almost any other mainstream video game journal site would curate what they're going to talk about and not just cover every press release that they get, where Gamatsu seems more than willing to have an article that just covers any press releases that are sent to them.
The guardian of the sky.
Which is exactly what I'm looking for in a news source, is somebody who would
I have fallen.
at least report once on everything that is given to them and not make judgments whether something is newsworthy or not. Because if you start to make judgments whether something is newsworthy or not, you get into that range of curation and yellow journalism. That in part is also why I try fairly hard to talk about every game that comes out on Steam instead of curating the games. I have in the past and will probably in the future, when backlogged, curate some of the games that we talk about on Steam. But I would say at least 95% of the time I'm showing every single game that I can show on YouTube that came out on Steam, and letting people make their own decisions. Of course, that then creates the situation where you talk a lot about you talk a lot about oh, has my spotlight not been working this whole time? Ah, darn it. Yeah, that does create a situation where you talk a lot about garbage games. Well, apologies for that. An hour and 12 minutes in, and I just was not looking at the thing, I guess, that well. Yeah. This is also a problem, certainly, of being an insomniac, is that you can just make mistakes and not realizing it. I'm getting old, to say the least, as we all are, and it seems like it's easier and easier to just think you're doing something right and then realize you've just not even seen the reality that was happening in front of your eyes. Alright, so now the web peak is working. Yeah, that sucks. But you probably didn't miss out on too much, but there was definitely times when I would have been moving the mouse around and assuming that you could see it, and inherently that also shows that if I wasn't an insomniac and if I was waking up and streaming at the right side, I almost certainly would have more people on every single live chat, people who could respond and tell me, hey, this is messed up, this is broken, this is where you need a producer, potentially, like, to come back and say, actually, this is broken, or this isn't working. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Canopsia, which doesn't look like much. It seems like it might be autobiographical. Follow Amelia, a stressed, overworked game dev. And then it seems like they've made kind of a generic asset flip game that seems to go in several different visual art styles for no good reason. and they're calling it a point and click. It's free to play. It's English only. This is the first game this developer's put on Steam. Honestly, this just looks like it's somebody complaining. I mean, I don't know what else you can say. It looks like somebody's complaining before they've even had the beginnings of a taste of success in developing games. Which at a certain point, hey, if you realize early on you hate being a game dev, good, move on with your life and move to a different career path. There's plenty of other programming jobs out there that a qualified game developer can have, assuming you are a qualified game developer. That's the assumption. If you're not a qualified game developer and you are instead just somebody who hasn't even really tried and is already whining about not being handed success on a silver platter, well, you're never going to succeed in any path that way.
My thunderbolts shall guide you, if they don't kill you first.
Okay, do we want to wait and play this later? I think we do. So we'll instead play this.
You follow behind.
And do that. Next we have a game on Steam here called Edgar's Room, which looks like it's an asset flip horror game. $3.49, English only. Here we have a game called Code Dread, which looks like an asset flip horror game. Doesn't even look particularly visually good compared to modern asset flip horror games. Apparently this one has some online co-op. I doubt you'll ever be able to play with too many people though. Whole bunch of languages, $4.99. Yeah. You pretty much have to at this point. Like, you pretty much have to at this point introduce the idea of having horror games take place in brightly lit environments. You just can't really have it take place in a dark environment, at least for the screenshots. Then there needs to be a few scenes at least that you can screenshot and particularly make just for screenshots to say, hey, this is not trying to hide things. We actually do have textures on the walls. We actually do have environments. We can make a skybox. And that's where something like Succubus, if you ignore the sexual content in Succubus, just the bright flaming redness that you see in Succubus shows a very different experience compared to what a standard asset flip horror game would give you. And Doom is kind of the same way. If Doom had been completely in the dark, it would have been a much worse game to look at. And so, even though you are in Doom fighting demons and running around hell, there's lots of fire, lots of flame, lots of glowing around demons and the bullets, making it way more cartoony than you would probably expect to see, but on that aspect, making it a lot easier to recognize as an interesting environment. Here we have a game on Steam called Goldfish Flap, which looks like it's a Flappy Bird game, although it doesn't seem like you actually are so much flapping. as dragging a mouse and barely controlling things. This is $1.79 English only, easily dismissed as a game. Here we have a Chinese RPG. Looks like it might be a mobile RPG game. Looks very RPG Maker-esque, but actually probably isn't so much a RPG Maker. $10.19 Chinese only. Too pixely for sure, too much text, and of course doesn't support English, so obviously I can't play it anyways.
You evade death.
Is that how you treat a lady?
I
So,
pray that you will be freed from
am I
suffering.
getting the missions done? This button shows quest missions, so I probably am not getting the solo daily missions done. Let's go back and check this. We are getting the solo missions done, which that's good, because that's what we needed to have happen. Still no dropped frames, that's good. No, we're getting the solo missions done, so we're fine. We just need a lot of victories. More victories than we probably will get today. And very possibly, by the end of Friday, we'll have gotten all the points needed for this solo quest.
Is fighting and despair
And then
all
there's
you
just
know?
no reason to do any more solo missions, and we'll be back to playing regular missions, regular daily quests. There is some weirdness in that my favorite cell phone game, the lewd anime waifu game, Destiny Child, has apparently they are undoing their regular maintenance that they're doing today, even though it's still doing it, and they're having to put it to the 18th. So nearly 5 days later, they're going to do another update. So they're just late on their newest content, which is kind of a nice thing, because a longer break between content would be appreciated, I think, slightly, because they constantly go from new event to new event to new event, but that probably is going to hurt their pocketbooks. And Shift Up apparently had to make some cutbacks recently, is what I had seen someone say. I don't know if this is really true, in that they haven't updated their Korean collectibles store, which their merch store not being updated really shouldn't be too big of a concern, but it does potentially say that they are either struggling financially or they are shifting their priorities towards the Project Eve game, I believe was the name of it, that they're working on. So I can't really complain, though, if Project Eve comes out and makes Shift Up a much more successful company.
No!
I can't really complain too much if my favorite game suffers a little bit there, or even gets like shut down. I'd hate for it to be fully shut down, but I wouldn't be super upset if it got significantly backburnered and didn't have any new content added to it for a long time, because my assumption is that if Shift Up did succeed with Project Eve, they would probably want to still maintain Destiny Child and at least finish the story on it. I would hope that. Like, I would hope that they wouldn't just completely forget about it the second they became successful. But they might. I mean, it definitely is a possibility that in that success they forget completely about Destiny Child. But I would like the story to be finished. That would be my main focus. But if they did finish the story, I'd say it was a good run.
Hear the dragons roar.
For a brief moment there, it seemed like what they were saying is that you wouldn't even be able to play the game for a week. And that would probably be the kiss of death for most players on Destiny Child, since it is a game that wants you to play it every single day. Breaking somebody of the habit of playing it every single day very possibly would break them of the habit of coming back to it ever.
You follow behind.
Let's see.
It looks like I'm up.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Legendary Mahjong 2. It's just a Mahjong solitaire game. Probably Chinese, if I was to guess. $7.19. Not Chinese. English, French, German, Dutch, and Russian. So, that's weird for a Mahjong game. Strikingly, we have seen a considerable lack of Mahjong games coming out from Chinese developers. And I would have to just assume that's because the Chinese video game approval process specifically said they weren't going to approve Mahjong games. And because they took that as too much of a promotion of gambling, even though Mahjong Solitaire is hardly gambling. But yeah, I haven't seen a Chinese language supporting Mahjong game on Steam in at least a year or two, and we've barely seen any Mahjong Solitaire games come out on Steam at all, which arguably maybe Steam and Valve themselves have just said we've got way too many Mahjong games. But yeah, that might be a slight bit of hope to say that game developers out there are moving slowly towards making better games, even if they are just trying to make low effort games. That they're moving away from styles of games that have been incredibly oversaturated. Next we have a game on Steam called Alien Accident, which looks like nothing of interest. $2.39 English and Russian. Here we have a game called Devil Tears, which saying it's a puzzle game. Like there's a hand dropping things and you're just avoiding the boxes being dropped on you. And it seems like they drop things specifically on certain steps. Yeah, it doesn't look like much of a game though. $1.79 English and Russian. I think I can easily dismiss that. Okay. Four damage to this.
Shining faith will carry you.
6 here. Evolve here.
No way! Come on, smile!
Strike.
Come on, smile!
Power up the characters, I guess.
What a drag.
Let's see. Gematsu says Boca Game Studio concept artist Mika Takahashi discusses her role in Focus Creator Spotlight. Boca is a studio founded by the Silent Hill, Siren, and Gravity Rush creator Kiichiro Tomoya, which, if I'm recalling correctly, yeah, Kiichiro Toyama is the maker of Silent Hill 1, whereas Kojima was involved in like Silent Hill 2 and it going forward. So there's a little bit of a split there, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of focus or thought of them ever working together. I'm not sure that they ever did work together, which does create an interesting argument about whether or not are you a fan of Silent Hill 1 or are you a fan of Silent Hill 2 and further games. Honestly, I think people are probably heavily fans of Silent Hill 2 and not particularly even that big of a fan of Silent Hill 3 and later games like 4 in the Room and things like that. This is a very artsy way to do an interview, put them in the dark shadow to contrast the dark imagery that she's drawing. You put somebody in that silhouette and it does set the theme and the lighting of the room very nicely. Okay. Go ahead and play this. And I guess play this.
You could use some
I'll
shine
check that.
yourself.
But an interview like this, unless you just listen to the audio, probably isn't going to tell you much. And these concept arts definitely look like art pieces that she has shown off, and they don't seem like art pieces that really tell you what their next game is. There's Siren series, I guess. There's a subquote here. Enemies are not simply terrifying, strong, or disgusting. They are part of sorrow linked to them, and more laughable part too. Which, yeah. This game that they're working on, which I assume is called Siren, strikes me as one that is going to be very spooky. Let's do this one.
You evade death.
And then I guess this one. And I guess that's all I could have done. If there was another way to have gotten this guy stronger, I could have probably won. But whatever. Yeah. Let's see. The game Monarch launches February 22nd in North America and February 25th in Europe, according to Gamatsu. Which we've seen teases of this game Monarch, but I'm not sure I've fully seen what it actually looks like. Yeah, I've seen stationary images of Monarch, and even in this trailer it is seemingly more stationary images that they're showing than anything else. And it looks very 3D, but even in this trailer they're trying to make it seem like it's more of a flat 2D visual novel style game, and I just don't think that's the case. So just skipping around on this trailer, it makes it seem like some level of malevolent force has driven a school crazy, and you have to find a way to undo that madness. I'm not winning particularly fast, but we are winning, and it's definitely nice to just have a victory. Can't be able to guarantee victories. A point-and-click adventure game called Virtuaverse is coming to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on October 28th. hardware graveyards, digital archaeology, crypto shaman tribes, and virtual reality debauchery. Interesting. This art style here does not look particularly good, though. And that is the thing that I guess all of this is gonna really come down to, is point-and-click adventures in particular can tell you pretty interesting stories without having to do a lot of animation. And if this is just a TV presentation and this animation isn't used that much, that'd be fine. See, this animation looks better. The more you zoom out, the less likely you're gonna recognize bad art. The art has to be pretty high quality. This definitely feels like one of those point-and-click adventure games that might have a weird enough story that is worth playing, regardless of whether or not it is particularly good as a point-and-click adventure. Most point-and-click adventure games don't have to be that good. Let's just end the turn here. Moving on, Gematsu has Circuit Superstars, now available for Xbox and PC, coming soon for PS4 and Switch, which this is a racing game. Yeah. Nothing really of interest there. The Famitsu review scores for issue 17-15 are out. They give Blue Reflection Second Light 32 out of 30, which is alright, but not particularly great. And then Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai, the Hinokami Chronicles, a 33 out of 40. So, not terrible reviews. Average reviews for both of those games. Not a lot of games coming out, certainly. It's been a long time since we've seen lots of Famitsu reviews. But in a lot of ways, too, the fact that they're only picking 2 games to review lets you really focus in on trusting the reviewers to actually play those games all the way to completion, compared to a website that reviews every single game out there, and then it's fairly obvious they aren't actually playing the games past the first couple hours.
It looks like I'm up.
I really don't have good reason to go into a big rant here about this, but I'm still listening to the Giant Bombcast, stupidly, and I listened to one of the people talk about how they were playing a demo, not the final version of the game, which A, is strike one. There's no reason for you to play and give a first impressions or anything based on the non-retail version of a game. Like, you shouldn't bother to even touch a game until you have the final retail release. Even if you have early access to the retail release, playing a earlier build is just letting somebody lie to you, and then you propagating the lie by claiming your review is based on the game that is available for purchase, without confirming and verifying every single fact by playing the actual release version. And they almost never disclose that this game was played on an earlier build than the release version. But what I think it was Jeff Gersman was complaining about is he played this earlier build, and then he was complaining that the earlier build didn't save any progress, so he played for an hour, and then he went into the settings to turn it from the fancy visuals mode to the performance mode, and when he changed the settings, it said it had to reboot, fair enough. And so it rebooted and then lost all of its progress. Well, the problem with this, and about complaining about this in first, is it is so first world problems in the first place. But the problem is, if you are going to try and compare content in the performance mode versus the visual mode, you would have had to have played the same content over again anyways. That's the only way you could be fair about it. So who cares that you lost progress? That is really just a whine because you want to burn through the game and get a little bit further. Almost certainly he's not going to bother to finish the game, but he wants to get further in the game before writing a review.
Take your soul.
No! Stop!
What this also highlights as a matter of policy
I've got to take a break.
is the fact that the second they introduced the idea of a performance mode versus a fancy visuals mode, there needed to have been established a standard policy around that, and it's been at least 2 years since performance versus visuals modes have been introduced at Xbox and PlayStations, and for there to have been no policy as to we're going to play all games in performance mode and not visual mode, that's crazy.
You crossed the line.
That's total insanity. There totally should have been, before performance and visual modes even were released, they were announced, and as soon as they were announced, there should have been discussion. Hey, are we going to play these games in performance or visuals? It should just be disclosed in every review that this was played in performance mode. We did not look at the visual mode. Or if you have enough manpower to set to it, you would say this was actually tested for the first hour is tested in performance mode, and then or the first hour is tested in visual mode, and then the rest of the game is played in performance mode. I think you heavily focus on performance mode because that makes more sense just as an efficient way to try things out.
Hear the dragons roar.
And I imagine there are more people who play games in performance mode than they do visual mode anyways. But yeah, the fact that you can flippantly switch between performance and visual mode, which is probably how they normally try to do it, but it's bit them in the butt. But they probably do just flippantly switch between the two on whims. That seems to be the way the review process, which inherently that gets to a bigger part that there is no established review process at Giant Bomb, and almost certainly I would suspect most mainstream video game journalist sites. Whereas if I was going to hire somebody else to review games with me, for me, we would definitely have to spend like a week sitting down and writing and discussing what is the process here, how are we going to go through this game and through games and review them, what weight are we going to put on visuals and audio and things like that. Even if we aren't going to have a review score number, we're going to have a focus there so that we have a similar voice and a review coming from me versus this fictional person I would hire to work with me. You shouldn't be able to tell who reviewed this, because as an entity and as a group channel, we should be on the same page as much as possible. Otherwise, you create a situation where even at Giant Bomb, there were definitely some reviews when they were coming from one person that I would have to just completely dismiss because that person didn't in any way align with the values I was looking for in a video game. Or I would have to dismiss them because that one person was not really qualified to be reviewing that kind of game in the first place.
Perennial prayer has come.
I'd say more often than not what happens in Giant Bomb is you have reviewers who are obsessed with certain types of games, and so they only really play that type of game and come from a very specific perspective around those types of games.
My prayers.
And that led to a lot of League of Legends talk, for example, many years back on Giant Bomb. Moving on, PlayStation Plus is going to add 3 PlayStation VR bonus games starting in November.
Keep relying on you, Dragon.
See, Rec Room, Beat Saber, PlayStation VR Worldwide, The Elder Scrolls Skyrim VR, and PlayStation and Resident Evil 7 Biohazard apparently are the top 5 VR games worldwide. Apparently this is the 5th anniversary for PlayStation VR, which honestly that is really damning it with praise in my opinion, because I just don't think there's a lot of quality
I'll get it right
product.
this time.
Like, I don't think there's a lot of quality VR games out there for PlayStation VR or otherwise. Here we have a game on Steam called Heliopedia, which looks like it's a
I'm hopeless.
world sandbox game, which if there was more visual polish to it, I think I might be slightly interested in this, but I kind of don't think there is enough polish here. Making a planet by finding resources and trying to create an atmosphere and grow plants. There's a lot of weirdness certainly around how we think Earth worked, in which there wasn't enough oxygen to make fire, and because there wasn't enough oxygen to make fire, there wasn't enough there wasn't a way for trees to actually burn, and so trees would just fall over and stay as logs on the ground and basically petrify for thousands of years. And to my understanding, fire is having oxygen to create fire, which trees turn the CO2 into oxygen, is something that seems like it only happens when there's organic life happening. So if we ever saw fire on another planet and we didn't bring it there by bringing oxygen, then there is a heavy chance of some form of organic life. Now, is that going to be intelligent life? Not in any way guaranteed to be that, but something. It would definitely be a very exciting discovery.
All the fluffy hugs.
That being said, Heliopedia still looks ugly. It's $4.99 English only. Next we have a game called Mira's Workshop, which is just a pick-to-cross game for $3.74, a bunch of languages. Here we have Endless Soul Light Solitaire, which looks like nothing of interest, $4.19. After playing Shadow Hands in that solitaire game, I think I'm pretty much done with solitaire on Steam until somebody offers me a real solitaire game and not just the generic solitaire games that Steam mostly have. Here we have Ultimate Racing 2D2,
Fighting in despair
which
all
looks like
you know?
nothing of real interest. Early access $7.99, English allegedly full audio. That's way too expensive. The first game is on the wish list. Let's see if we can bring it up. It is rated very positively at $7.99, English full audio. And this came out in 2018. So it really does become a question, do they deserve a sequel for that type of game? Or is this just trying to double dip? Man, these links do not want to load. I don't know what's going on there. Still no frame drops. And I don't suspect we'll have any network problems ever again. Unless it starts happening that a lot of people get the same internet service that I have, and then it becomes congested, which that's what happens over the years. Is it starts off good and then it gets worse and worse, relatively speaking at the very least, if not in just locked statistics. So you are probably fairly smart to jump from one service provider to another service provider for almost all services. That they try to lock you into these long-term contracts, but then the long-term contracts as a concept isn't even really what they're trying to do nowadays. That used to be the thing. Now they try to get you just to be lazy so they can increase the value. Like they can increase the cost year over year. So it's not even long-term contracts. Cell phones still do long-term contracts, but most other services don't. And if you do a long-term contract, it tends to lock in the price, not increase it. I don't think it would be quite legal to have someone drastically increase the cost of a month-to-month bill and lock you into a long-term contract for a year. Back to video games though, I guess I have to put this on the follow list, but I feel like they're double dipping a little too early, 3 years later, selling what looks very much like the same game. Here we have a game on Steam called Changes, which looks like nothing of interest. $17.99, English allegedly full audio. That is way too expensive. Here we have Back 4 Blood. I've mostly heard bad things about Back 4 Blood, but this is, I think, one of those cases where you're going to play in 4-player groups, online PvP, player versus player, and online co-op, mostly online co-op, I would say. This does have de novo. That doesn't seem to be bothering too many people at the moment, looking at the reviews. It's got a bunch of languages supporting full audio in several of them, but not all of them. There's an annual pass here for $40 more, so they're going for like $100, which is probably way too expensive. As a Left 4 Dead successor, I really don't think there is a ton new here compared to Left 4 Dead, but Left 4 Dead is old enough that I could see the fans of people of Left 4 Dead, people still playing Left 4 Dead, would be willing to maybe jump over to Back 4 Blood. So what I have to do here is put this on the follow list. It, to me, strikes me as way too expensive, and I would have to wait till there's just like a ultimate version that is down to closer to $30 before I'd even consider it. But I am definitely interested in seeing how people feel about it. Now they seem 84% positive. Give it the first 6 weeks and see if people are still playing it and still positive about it. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people just say the game is completely dead. that you're not fighting just zombies, you're fighting trolls, so that lets them create different types of monsters. It definitely does look like there's a lot of visual polish improvements, and it does look like there's a slightly faster action sequence, a lot more disembodiment happening here. Zombies are losing limbs where that wasn't something in the previous game. But I'm not 100% sure that this type of game really works after the first 6 months, after the first 6 weeks, after a year. Whenever I get around to potentially playing a game like this, it very possibly is going to be completely dead. And something like Dying Light, I could see Dying Light 2 coming out and that drastically changing the reception of something like Back 4 Blood and the player base for something like Back 4 Blood. I'm not sure if Dying Light 2 is going to have 4-player co-op, and that might change the equation too.
You follow behind.
Here we have a game called Ceilles, C-E-I-L-L-E-S,
I'll face
which
you head on.
I guess is a block pushing game. Maybe you spin the world and then manipulate gravity. Yeah, you do. It doesn't look like anything that would interest me, though. $2.54, English, Japanese, Korean. We've seen so many of these, and first of all, I would have to see color. Like, I definitely want to see color. There's no reason to make it black and white like this. It would have to be very visually polished, and these types of games clearly are being made out of some level of laziness and a desire not to have visual polish.
You were done for.
Hit that, and then hit that. Gametsu says the mystery visual novel Return to Shiro Nagasu Island is coming to Switch, which this is a
Free call on me.
oddly large even for anime style eyeball. Let's see. Game is on Steam already, so if Steam wants to load, which honestly, one of the things I'm wondering about with my new internet service providers is how much needs to change as far as my quality of service, if quality of service even needs to be enabled. That there might very well be an argument to just turning it off. Because I've just like powerhoused potentially past the need of quality of service. I don't know if that's really true though. And it kind of doesn't matter how much upload or download you have if websites are slowing you down, which they will. You would have to be going to different websites. So this is an overwhelmingly positive 97% visual novel, horror, mystery. The animation seems a little rough. It is on my wish list. $4.99. There is also a soundtrack. No audio on any of them. So that definitely gives more relevancy to a visual novel like this, that if I was going to try really hard to play a visual novel game, something like this does fall into the category of deserving more consideration. Okay. I think that worked fairly well.
Can't keep relying on you, Dragon.
Labyrinth of Toho Gensokyo and the Heaven-Piercing Great Tree for PC is now available in English. No word on the English update for console versions. So, let's see what this looks like as an actual game. Looks to me like it's a position placement RPG. And it looks like there's a lot of people. A lot going on. So that's probably not probably not much of a game here. It's interesting, they have a link to the Steam, link to the Steam, link to the Steam page, which I guess that helps, but does Steam have affiliate links is an interesting question to ask, because I'm not sure. It does. I just realized that Froggy Maestro is supposed to be a Kermit the Frog clone.
I've got to take a break.
So yeah, we can see this game. It's tagged as a JRPG and it's rated very positively, but the actual screenshots that show you anything are kind of few and far between. It's a lot of just explosion screenshots, and that's not informative to say the least to have these as screenshots. So they're doing a pretty bad job. And that probably explains why this is not on my fall list even, is that I probably took one look at this and go, oh, this is another Toho game. And it just doesn't look that interesting. English now in the languages. And I think I pretty much have to dismiss this even as it is. I just don't think there's something here I'd want to play. So I'm not even going to bother to put it on the fall list now.
You follow behind.
It is so nice to have some
I pray that you will be
success,
freed from suffering.
even if it is just playing solo success. Let's see, Komatsu says the open world simulation game Dreamland Village Life has been announced for PC. This looks like it's a little bit more kid friendly.
Fighting and despair all you
Let's
know?
see. Looks like it might very well be trying to be more of a mobile game too. Once again, mobile games can look pretty visually polished by modern standards. Yeah, and I don't know if a Stardew Valley Minecraft clone game, these screenshots are poorly depicted on their website, where it's just cropping in the middle, cropping off the heads and legs. Like, I would almost assume that they did that intentionally for the girls so you could see the skirts, but then that really doesn't make any sense for the boys. And they're not even centered in that case. But yeah, as for the actual game, farming, and then having some other activities, you'd have to very quickly have a lot of activities to fight against something like Minecraft for that to really work. Like, this looks interesting, but if this is your village and you can only make slight variations on the village and then the rest of it is a forest, then basically nothing in the corners. You're hardly a ever expanding world. Which then you've got not a Minecraft clone, but you've got more of a Stardew Valley clone. And I never really feel like there's enough. Or maybe this isn't as much a Stardew Valley clone as it's supposed to be a Animal Crossing clone, but even at that you would have to have a massive amount of you'd have to have a massive amount of decoration elements, and I'm not sure you can make an Animal Crossing clone without putting a lot of funding behind it with the decorations and the art style staying the same. You can't just go to Unity store and asset flip thousands of assets, because at that point you're paying so much for the licensing, assuming you're actually paying for licensing, that you would bankrupt yourself and your game would never be profitable. Like, Animal Crossing only makes sense in the fact that Nintendo is behind it and funding it. And you have that brand loyalty around Animal Crossing that a new game series of similar style isn't going to have. Moving on, Solar Ash has been delayed to December 12th, December 2nd, no longer due on October 26th. Which, okay. Don't know if that really changes much for most people, because I don't even recognize Solar Ash. Interesting, we have a 404 article here from GameDeveloper.com. This was supposed to be Paradox staff accuses management of enabling sexual harassment, and yet that article has just been completely taken down. We have not seen a case of GameDeveloper.com being bullied or pushed into removing articles, so I have to question, maybe they just completely didn't verify their sources and published complete total lies to the point where they could get sued and would be liable, or there's just a glitch in the link they typed. I would suspect it's probably more likely that there's a glitch in the link they typed. Otherwise, Magic Leap has net $500 million and unveils a second-generation augmented reality headset, which, netting $500 million is probably a lot of money for most people. Maybe not enough money for Magic Leap, though, when you're trying to make an augmented reality VR headset. What's funny is this looks like you have to basically swing this back half, like, upward to put it on your head, and then swing it downward. Like, it doesn't seem like you can just pull the thing apart or slide it on like a pair of glasses. Seems like you have to basically attach it to your face. Which that doesn't feel like that would be a comfortable experience.
I'm already a proper lady, you know. I've got to take a break.
I'm still not really thinking that that augmented reality is going to succeed in any real numbers. Even in the workplace, like we're hitting a point now where there's a question about how many jobs will even exist in the future, so the idea of jobs being more technical and having augmented reality around them will probably happen in a few places like surgery and mechanic jobs, but I doubt you're going to see Amazon.com giving augmented reality headsets to all of its packers and shippers anytime soon. Here we have a game on Steam called The Cult Crime Police, which is an interesting idea. Looks like it's basically a comedy adventure game, mystery game.
Take your soul.
It doesn't feel like it's a troll game. It feels like it might be very similar to some of the early Telltale games before they went 3D and made the standard Telltale style games. It's free. It's English only. I'm gonna put it on the follow list, but I would have to say just check it out because it's free and it's the first game from this developer. Once again, it gets questionable as to how do you make money making a free game, but I guess that's not really my problem as the critic. Here we have a game on Steam called Raccoon Arrival, which seems like you play as a standing on its hind legs raccoon. But they say it's a walking simulator and meditative puzzles game, but you really can't have both. Which makes me definitely think that this is just an asset flip garbage game. Honestly, it feels more like somebody was halfway through making a game and then just gave up. Early access, English only, well, English only, not early access. $5.19. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I probably will have to remove it and nobody will ever review it or play it. That would be my guess as to how that plays out.
Eternal supplication. Hear the dragons roar.
Let's see. I think may have talked about this. PlayStation Studios has named the former Apple Arcade leader as head of mobile. PlayStation has expressed the deal to bolster its mobile game strategy, which I guess at this point they really don't have a mobile game strategy to mention. So Nicola Sebastiani. This PlayStation logo at least shows a few more games of the PlayStation lineup, although I really can't tell you what this is, and I couldn't actually name this racing game. I can at least name the rest of these games. I can't actually name this sports game. But for a console, for the PlayStation 5 in particular, or just the last couple of years of making games, having less than 10 games to mention in your lineup is definitely not a quality presentation.
What a drag.
Oh.
Your shining fate will carry you.
Fallen.
Let's see, Unity says it's committing to a net zero carbon emissions to help fight climate change. That being said, Unity is a software company. They're not running submarines. They're not running smokestacks of electrical generator plants. So them having a net zero carbon emissions is just them effectively just buying electricity from a company that's claiming to
My thunderbolts shall
have
guide you
net zero
if they don't kill you
carbon
first.
emissions, which doesn't mean there is no carbon emissions being made, just that they are effectively planting trees to offset the carbon that's being made, or they are scrubbing the air. Maybe there's some people out there scrubbing the air to remove carbon from the air. More carbon than what they're putting out. And I would say, at the very least, it makes more sense for a big corporation to try and save the environment than it does to tell people to drive less and recycle more, which is about as much as the individual can do, unless we want to try and pressure the U.S. military, the U.S. Navy, to replace all their submarines with electric-run submarines, or it's not even a submarine. Submarines run on nuclear, so they wouldn't really be putting out carbon anyways. It would be shipping ships that are burning coal and other types of boats in the Navy. So yeah, those things I suppose could happen. You could try and pressure the U.S. Navy to change the types of fuels it uses, but I don't think you'd get very far with that. The unwavering support of the U.S. military is fairly set in stone, and matters of national security are going to trump any effort to save the environment. There we go.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
So the question is, while we can keep playing, is there a reason to keep playing the solo today? We're nearly at 1200, so there's only about 5,000. We have 4 more days to get to that, so I should play a little bit off screen to make sure I get all of this. But as specifically for today, the missions are to get ranked, unranked victories, so we need to come to multiplayer, play unranked, go into this. We need to get some kind of victory, so we don't have to play Sanctuary. We could try Ramp Dragoncraft, for instance, just to keep it varied. And so now we're going to play against some real people and hope we get 3 victories, which it may take us longer to do that than to get 5 victories in single. Meanwhile, we have a game on Steam here called Poppy Playtime, which looks like it's a horror game, horror puzzle adventure. I'm not sure if you're the creepy guy, or it looks like you're the creepy monster, not the other person. So seems like you're a creepy monster being chased with other creepy monsters.
Bow before Dark Dragoon, ruler of the skies.
What's funny is this is rated very positively, but I'm not sure if it's not just rated positively because some streamers played it. English Philanio. I'm gonna put this on the fall list, single player only. But I'd have to think really hard if I wanted to actually play something like this, because I am very much of the thought that this is probably not something I really would want to play. One of the things about the Twitch leak, and Giant Bomb talked about this too, and I'll just mention that I think they were correct, is once they start getting into the numbers more, Giant Bomb agreed with what I had pretty much figured too, is that the vast majority of people streaming on Twitch are not making even $19,000 a year. Like, well below the poverty line as far as just getting ads on the directly from Twitch, and the smaller streamers almost certainly are just getting ads directly from Twitch. Now, in all fairness, the much larger vast majority of people on YouTube are not making any money or making below $19,000 too. But yeah, streaming really is just not a career for anybody other than the ultra successful. And while I would gladly trade the $19,000 a year that some people are making on Twitch for the $0 a year I'm making right now on YouTube, $19,000 a year does not magically pay all my bills and leave me in a good position by any means. I really would love for my YouTube channel to someday get successful enough so it's paying closer to $40,000 a year consistently, even if I'm not making any new content at all, so I could retire.
Cross the line.
Like, I'm not looking to be a millionaire by any means, but I would like to be able to live comfortably and within a level of safety and security. Of course, if they implemented universal basic income, then that probably wouldn't be anywhere as big of an issue. Yep. And without trying to get into a rant of it, it is definitely stupid that first world countries like the United States cannot take care of its citizens and instead have created a system where you have to work and hopefully save to take care of yourself into your old age. Otherwise you are very likely and definitely under the threat of being homeless and starving in the streets, which there is no good reason for in a first world country for anybody to be homeless or starving in the streets. Even crazy people who would tear up a home if you gave them one of the 11 houses available for every homeless person out there. We should have mental facilities that we can put people in and say, hey, here is a hostel, here is a mental facility, stay here. You don't have to, we know you don't have the capability of maintaining a home, and we know you're gonna like smoke in it and trash it and like
Did someone see me?
darn it, that could have saved me against this if but probably wouldn't have. So we need to lower this guy's defense.
If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
Let's see.
If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
Rush. Attack, can't attack. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Dungeon Color, which looks like nothing of interest. You switch between flames to achieve a rainbow in each room.
Every shot is a miracle.
So you walk on the red flame, and then that opens the red doors so that you can go through a different room. Yeah, there might be something to this, actually. $2.79, English, Portuguese, Brazil. I'll give it a follow. Be a little bit generous. I've been fairly cruel, and I need to be fairly cruel, certainly when reviewing games, but there's an occasional time for generosity also. Let's see, here we have a game called Punk Wars Prologue, which is a prologue, so we can dismiss it for now. Free English and Polish. Here we have a game called Run, 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 which seems to be an infinite runner with some asset flip Minecraft environments. Yeah, that's about all I can tell. It doesn't even have a video. It's rated very positively, but I don't see anything here I'd really want to play. It's running towards the screen instead of running away from the screen, which feels a little awkward. It's English, Portuguese, Brazil language. We have one defense.
I'll head the vanguard.
My heart is a garden flow.
Okay. I needed to attack this guy with this, actually. Come to think of it.
Stop!
If I had gotten this down to 1, then I could banish this guy. And then that, but... yeah, it seems like I'm gonna lose next turn anyways. Next we have a game on Steam called Not It Spookiest Edition, which seems to be some kind of horror visual novel. She's wearing this striped shirt like she's in prison, but I don't think she really is. What's weird though is $4.89 English, allegedly full audio. I kind of want to put this on the fall list, but I want to see, is there a Not It game before? No. So did they just update the game? I guess maybe they just didn't want the game to be called Not It because that's just too simplistic of a title. Stripes just don't work. Yeah. You should just never have a character in black and white stripes. Visually or fashion-wise, it just does not work in video games. I don't think it probably works too much in the real world either. Anyways, I'll put this on the follow list. We'll see if we get some reviews. Try that again. GameDeveloper.com says Riot Games is taking cross-team chat out of League of Legends to curb toxicity. Disabling /all chat is a big high watermark for how Riot thinks about toxicity and player interactivity.
Bow before Dark Dragoon, ruler of the skies.
As someone who doesn't play League of Legends, I have no idea how much real toxicity exists there. Maybe a lot, maybe very little. I don't know how many people are playing League of Legends in the real world outside of tournaments. It may be very much that the tournament players are a lot more trash talking than regular players. I think if you looked at like major sports players in basketball, football, they talk a lot of trash on the field that if there was a mic there recording it and broadcasting it may get them in trouble. And I don't know how much trash talk is really happening in your local tag football field game, or just a friendly game of football on a weekend. Seems like it would be very easy to just auto mute cross-team chat while still allowing it for people who want it. Or to let people just mute and set their own settings. For Riot to take the extra step of forcing everybody to be silent. I mean, isn't that just the things that a kindergarten teacher does? Just the totalitarian, everyone be silent now, you cannot talk. No speaking, detention for anyone who talks. Like, that's the kind of stuff that even a, like, first grader does not like, does not agree with, and takes offense to the complete reduction of free speech.
Don't worry, I've got this.
Like, it is definitely in my book the reduction of free speech if you're standing on a soapbox in a public park talking, and then all of a sudden a big corporation is blaring music on speakers into that park so you can't be heard. That is a maybe not one-for-one comparison, but that's basically what they're doing.
Pay thy reverence. Heaven demands it. Worship the primal flame.
So I have to take a story like this as not a good thing by any means. This is yet another example of an assault on a direct assault on free speech
You don't know when to
in
quit.
favor of fighting this boogeyman that will never be defeated because you're fighting against basic human nature,
I'll blast my way through.
and you're probably making the game less enjoyable for a lot of people, and they don't care about their actual people that are playing the games in favor of fighting this SJW toxicity boogeyman.
Grovel, like the
Look at something like GTA Online, for
I have
instance.
done the gods' bidding.
You would almost assume that a GTA Online would be the most toxic place ever, because the actions and the theme and feeling of the story is fairly toxic. And yet, I've never heard of a story of GTA Online claiming there was toxicity in the player base. Any real number of it. In fact, the vast majority of games that are just like League of Legends and Gears of War never talk about the idea of their player base being toxic, which definitely makes it seem like there are just a couple of companies that are being pushed into believing this false narrative. Well, it definitely seems like a false narrative. I've heard many stories of scammers on World of Warcraft Online. I've never heard anyone claim that the player base on EverQuest or World of Warcraft Online was particularly toxic, even though there was kids scamming other kids out of their gold and things like that. Like, seems like it's just a lot of whining. Moving on, again, developer.com says Epic and Innersloth appear to be mending relations after a Fortnite imposters kerfluffle. Update: Epic and Innersloth are hinting at an upcoming collaboration for Fortnite's imposters game mode. What was this kerfluffle? I don't even remember. Let's see.
Let's play. Wins, here I go.
I guess Innersloth is the maker of Among Us. And so Imposters is basically stealing the idea of Among Us. This follows the dust up in August when the developers of Innersloth publicly complained about Epic Games releasing a fast-following game mode that's so closely borrowed from the core mechanics of Among Us. Not only does Fortnite's social deduction game make use of an imposter character, it employs a task system and the special powers for the killer, both mechanics that help define Innersloth's smash it. Yeah, I could definitely see some sour grapes of Fortnite basically just stealing an idea from Among Us. And even if most of the concepts in Among Us are fairly generic social deduction things that you would have in any social deduction game.
Twig won't do a thing.
Yeah, I could see them being upset about that. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called FAWE, F-A-W-E, which looks like it's a card game.
Those leaves weren't just lying around.
Looks almost like it's a Native American style card game, or Magic Fairy style card
May the
game.
forest be at peace.
It doesn't look like much of a card game, though. Seems very generic. $3.39 English only. 4 players on 1 board, 4 cards and 1 super cards. Single player with online PvP. It feels too simplistic as a game. I couldn't imagine playing more than a couple games of this. And that does not work for a... that really doesn't work for a collectible card game.
No, thank you.
There's a lot more where that came from.
I'm gonna rest for a bit.
Let's see, next we have a game called Phantom Project. Psychological horror game. Seems like you're playing as this pale little girl wandering around a horror environment. See, the thing about this is it seems to me like like there's a little bit more visual polish on it. That being said, this trailer definitely does not look like there's much of a game here. It's all just text.
Can no longer tell if it's plot.
Don't worry, I've got this. My arrows don't waver.
This game is a prototype and subject to major changes and improvements. Yeah.
How?
It definitely looks like whatever this video was made is way different from what these other screenshots are. But I don't know if these are really, if there really is a video game here or not. They're putting it out for free. English, allegedly full audio, third-party EULA. The problem with this, and I'm going to put this on the fall list just because I want to see if it actually improves. The problem with this, though, is Valve should not be allowing prototypes as games on their storefront. They should have a keyword search that says, hey, if the word prototype shows up in the description anywhere, we need to look at this a little bit closer. We need to not allow things labeled as prototypes on our storefront. There's a difference between a prototype and a demo. There's a difference between early access and prototypes, because prototypes often don't lead to a finished product, where a early access game is committing more to a finished product, or should be assumed to be committing more towards a finished project. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Astra, which doesn't look like anything of interest to me. Looks like it's probably a German kind of low effort game. $5.99 English and Russian, not German, Russian is what I meant to say. Here we have a game called Dementia de Do Tempo. I don't even know what language that would be.
Let's play.
Whatever, it looks like garbage. Early access, $1.33, English, Portuguese, Brazil.
Let's play.
Here we have a game called What's Your Gender? Which, yeah,
You're a fiery one.
this definitely feels like a troll game. If it's not, then it's just an insane, insane SJW game.
This is the path I've decided on.
Yeah, and we've seen like good non-Euclidean games that look like this and had interesting gameplay while not really having a story. So there's really no reason to have a game like this and then put in this message. And what I'm afraid to really find out is that this developer is one of the developers of some of the other non-Euclidean puzzle games that have come out, and I'm glad to see that is not the case, because I'd hate to have to reevaluate my opinion of some of those game developers. Yeah. Although that would be weird. Like, actually, it's a little surprising that hasn't happened as much, where somebody has come out and reevaluated their feelings and changed
Everything.
and drastically gone down one specific like political opinion and made a game that reflected that. This is another one of those cases though where you're much better off not talking politics or religion ever, and putting it in your game makes no sense. I have to just assume that the non-Lucidian puzzle part of this is almost an asset flip, or stolen concepts in favor of doing the SJW game. Yeah, it was made at a Binary and Beyond game jam. It's English and German. So yeah, this game wouldn't have even existed. It's inspired by Anti-Chamber. Of course, the YouTube algorithm here won't even, I think, suggest Anti-Chamber. Well, I would suggest playing Anti-Chamber. I can't suggest playing any game that's made really from a game jam, because they tend to be way too short and not really things that should be available on sale in the first place. The concept of a game jam, as I understand it, is to let you start down the path of creating a game in 48 hours or 24 hours, not have you make a complete product that is sellable in 24 to 48 hours. It is frankly insulting to the game development community in large to say that you could make a fully fleshed out video game in 48 hours, because then why does it take everybody else 4 years plus?
Bow before Dark Dragoon, ruler of
Last
the
thing I can
sky.
claim is that
Hey, pal.
video game developers are lazy or slow in their development. Some may be a little slow, but usually they're not really slow. They just are doing a lot of work. Let's see, we had already talked about this, but GameDeveloper.com says Google has countersued Epic for dodging the Play Store developer fees, which, yeah, I assume that means they just put in-app purchasing of V-Bucks. I don't suspect that means anything more, like they literally just didn't pay their bills for something else that they owed Google. I don't think you have to pay Google to be on the Play Store any real long-term fee. Maybe a one-time licensing fee and that's it, or a one-time listing fee, I guess is what it would be, not a licensing fee. There's a ton of programs on the Play Store that are really old, and if you had to pay even like $100 a year to maintain the fact that you're listed, most games would disappear and most programs would disappear. And there's still a lot of programs that kind of just suck, or that are missing things you'd like to do. I was trying to figure out a way to automate downloading a log file every like day on Android, and yeah, there's not something that really will do that. Like, you'd think you could just get into Chrome or Chrome tab into the Linux operating system of Android and just make a wget command or a curl command to download a file, but no, you can't, because all of that requires you to have a rooted Android phone. And so some of the Linux things that you could easily do and would be very easy just don't have duplicated functionality on the Play Store, because there's probably only a dozen people that would ever even think they would want that. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says EA has renewed its FIFA Pro I assume this is supposed to be FIFA Pro, maybe it is FIFA Pro. Partnership to keep players' likenesses in FIFA. Deal includes the rights to thousands of players' names and likenesses. So, I can only take that to mean that they were just negotiating and playing hardball by leaking out stories that they may rename their series and take FIFA off the name of their series. It says FIFA Pro here also. Maybe that is the name of their company, is FIFA Pro. But yeah, maybe they were playing hardball. Maybe we will still potentially see a name change, even though they're maintaining the likenesses. I wouldn't be surprised if they were considering changing the name but maintaining the likenesses anyways. And then I barely even want to mention it, but GameDeveloper.com says workers' unions object to the Activision Blizzard settlement as legal maelstrom rages on. The CWA, which is the Communications Workers of America union, describes the recent attempts to settle a harassment lawsuit as a slap in the face. Which, of course, yeah. Unless they actually were going to agree to they were actually going to agree with it, they would basically call it a slap in the face. It's funny that it's the Communication Workers of America union that is working with Activision Blizzard. I'm not even sure if they actively have a union in or union presence in Activision Blizzard, or if they're just trying to establish one. Because my assumption was that the Communication Workers of America were people who worked for phone companies, AT&T, Verizon, things like that. T-Mobile maybe, although T-Mobile maybe not, because T-Mobile was originally a German company. But I suspect there's considerably fewer people working at phone companies these days than they were 10 years ago even, so it wouldn't shock me greatly if they're trying desperately to branch out into different fields of employees to maintain their union membership numbers.
I've got this, so bring it.
The settlement is the attempt to a settlement here is with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which doesn't seem like that's a California specific one. That seems like that's more federal. And creating an $18 million compensation fund may not be anywhere as much money as CWA would like to have.
I'll scorch you as black as these skies. Shut up and burn!
There we go. Let's see. The co-op adventure, It Takes Two, has sold over 3 million copies. You've helped send a clear message. A co-op adventures are here to stay. I hope not, because my main complaint with It Takes Two and the game before this from the same developer that was co-op only is that I couldn't play either one of those games because I don't have a co-op partner. It is kind of shocking that 6 months out of its release, it feels like 6 months. It launched March 26, 2021. So yeah, that's about 6 months, I would say, without actually doing the math. It's shocking that they've sold 3 million copies, considering how you've hamstrung your sales severely by eliminating anybody who doesn't have a co-op partner. You almost certainly would have had over 6 million units sold if this did have a single player function, there's no indication that you could ever play this game in single player mode or in a single player mode. So I'm shocked by the numbers being this high, but it really then again just brings about the same problem. And it definitely does not make an argument that to a player like me who doesn't have a co-op partner that I'm in the wrong and I just need to desperately seek out a co-op partner because all games are going to be co-op only in the future. That's not going to happen. I've got plenty of other games to play, and plenty of games are coming out that don't require co-op. Let's see. Just gonna hope this works.
There's a lot more where that came from.
You hit this, and that does no damage,
Must be paid.
and then that kills it. Guess that worked as well as it could have. Let's see. Undead Labs founder Jeff Strain has formed a new distributed studio called Possibility Space. They're going to address the evolving needs of developer. I assume a distributed studio basically means that there's going to be people either working from home or people just in general working in different offices, which that's hardly a new concept, but selling it as a sales point almost highlights you that you don't have a better sales point for your new studio. So it includes notable names like a visual director Jan Ng from Campo Santo and Valve, which how many people at Campo Santo ended up at Valve? I thought it was just one, but I guess it was more than one person. IP director Austin Walker from Waypoint and Friends at the Table podcast. I've heard of this name, but maybe it's not the same Austin Walker. Maybe it is. And maybe that is a problem. Maybe not. I'd have to figure out who Austin Walker is. I think he was on... There was an Austin Walker, I think, at Giant Bomb for a long time. Maybe that is him. Yeah, I don't particularly think he'd be good at a video game company. Then narrative systems director Liz England from Ubisoft and Insomniac, and design director Richard Fogay from Undead Labs and Probably Monsters, which Probably Monsters may have been the makers of that game I didn't like, Always Sometimes Monsters. Let's see. It allows staff to live where they want, to live and work where they want while supporting the communities they love. It's not a terrible thought. Like, there really is very little reason to have an office for game developers in particular. The only real problem is when somebody starts, like, when you have managers who can't justify being having a job, they start to make problems. Or when you have employees getting lazy and not really doing the amount of work that you would expect from a game developer, which they expect a ridiculous amount. But particularly knowing that there are at least complaints of a massive amount of lack of professionality and frat boy concepts, frat boy mentality in video game businesses, getting rid of people being at the office somewhat protects you against inappropriate behavior accusations, But you still have the high possibility of people sending inappropriate emails or inappropriate video chats.
I present you a gift from my
I'll be back for round 2.
Although you can monitor those a lot better. It is way easier to walk up and whisper in the ear of somebody in a break room. Then it's way easier to get away with doing that than it is to start a video chat and be naked. Because you can assume that any office is recording all video presentations, and that can be used as evidence against any bad behavior.
If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
Let's see.
Worship the primal flame.
We have a game on Steam here called Desert Magic Adventures, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter game of no real interest. Oddly, you have an anime girl kind of for the logo of the publisher, but the actual game is not anime in any ways. $6.59, English only. That really highlights why major publishers don't tend to have a avatar to represent them. While that is fairly popular in Asian countries, you kind of need your logo to be very fluid and compatible with whatever the game is. And that's why you'll see, like, most logos are very simplistic and they just fade in and fade out. They don't play music usually, and they don't have any like characters. Pixar, when talking movies, has the little Pixar light, and Disney has the Disney castle, but every Pixar movie and every Disney movie modifies those logos to better match the theme and narrative of that specific movie. So the logo is different every time, and video game companies don't even really bother on that. Here we have a game called The Fortress of Varnolosia, which Varnolis, I guess is how you pronounce that. It's oddly blurry. Like, I'm not seeing a single screenshot that shows me the character
Weird feeling.
that isn't kind of blurry, and she's always got her hands in her hands. See, they're calling this a walking simulator, but I would call this at least an attempt at a standard 3D platforming puzzle adventure game. And I like what I'm seeing in the background. I just don't get why they have so defocused the foreground when games are not cameras. Like, the cameras in games, the virtual cameras in games, are not real world cameras. There's no reason why the foreground should be blurred out so that you focus on the background that much. And the idea of maybe having a character that is just blurry throughout the game because it's like cursed or something, I don't think that works as a visual presentation either. They are wearing this mask. There was another game where a character wore a mask. And it was announced. Then I don't recall it ever coming out. Or it came out and it was multiplayer only. They're calling it a dungeon crawler also. $9.99. English, allegedly full audio, I kind of believe it. I'm going to put this on the fall list, but I suspect this might be really short. Pretty, but short. And yeah, I'm definitely noticing some if things were just going to work, some of these things should be loading faster than they are, but they aren't. So I'm still seeing some weirdness as far as maybe that's my quality of service being an issue. I don't know. But
I shall take the front.
Steam does not feel like it is super snappy all of a sudden. It still feels like it, when it wants to load, it wants to load. Here we have a game that's all Asian, so we have to pretty much reject it regardless. Doesn't look particularly interesting anyways. Early access, $4.99, Chinese only. Here we have a game called Critadel, which looks like it's a platformer beat-em-up game. Infinite action awaits. It's kind of a bullet hell platformer, is how I would describe it. They're calling it a roguelite also. Yeah, I think this deserves a follow and is already on my follow list. I think we had seen this. Yeah, I recognize this image before. English, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, and Spanish. So we'll leave that on the follow list. We need one more victory to get to the temporary gems. Maybe we'll get that, maybe we won't. I'm going to try and mostly wrap up as soon as possible. I'm just trying to burn through some of the games, but we'll leave some for Friday, I think, too. Here we have a game called Theology, which... Theology? I don't even know how you'd pronounce that. It feels like it might be a troll game. If it's not, it's still an ugly asset flip game.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
Free to play VR. I don't even know if asset flip is the right word here. It's an ugly polygonal game. They could have made all of these polygons images themselves, so asset flip really is the wrong word. I've got to be careful not to start just calling everything an asset flip and lose the meaning of the idea. If it's an asset flip, it fairly obviously bought and did very little with the art assets it bought at one of the Unity or Unreal storefronts, or a storefront that would sell pre-made assets. Here we have a game called Lumion, which looks like it's a precision platforming, frustration platforming game, which definitely aren't my cup of tea. And this trailer is not really showing you any gameplay. It is rated very positively, so if that's your type of game, I'd say check it out. $10.79, whole bunch of languages here. Here we have a game called Bubble People, which I think is just a hidden object game. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more to it than that. Yeah. Seems like you're just clicking on people and popping them like bubbles. I don't even know if there's any logic beyond that. Free to play, whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio in every language it supports. So that's going to be a no. Here we have a game called The League of Enthusiastic Losers, which looks to me like it's a point-and-click game. It says it's a adventure game about caring for yourself and your friends and about not having to be unhappy just because you're a loser in the eyes of others. Which, that's an interesting story. $11.99 English and Russian. Although, at a certain point this might be insulting. And it might be coming from the perspective that people who play video games are losers, which I would completely disagree with. I think the vast majority of people play video games these days, so while there will be some losers amongst them, no more than any other hobby. Honestly, even at this point,
Waiting for you.
I couldn't think of a hobby that I would just say you are in general a loser to. If you are in this hobby that's really reductionist, and while I may in my wayward youth considered thought that maybe some comic book fans or something were losers, I don't think I generally think of anybody as a loser in general. Because, like, loser to what? What are you losing? This game, is life a game? Are you failing at life because you're not accomplishing or doing what others want or expect of you? I think that's a very bad way to look at life and live your life. Now, I will still argue that it seems like there is way more pedantic and argumentative people in the comic book fandom than average, and movie buffs in general, as a movie buff myself, tend typically a little bit more pedantic and hoity-toity about the quality of movies, and they can't just sit and enjoy a dumb fun movie a lot of times. But I wouldn't consider them losers. The only group of people I could really think are pretty lame are pickup artists. I would say they're pretty much losers. Members of cults, I think that those are pretty much losers if you're in a cult. And I know you're a victim, certainly, but the enthusiastic people in cults or pyramid schemes, that's pretty stupid. I don't think gamer bros are losers, although I may have felt that way, and a lot of people may have thought of that way. I get they like what they like, and then they're just not interested in other things. Frat boys and frat boy mentalities, I think those people tend to be losers, particularly if you're not in college. If you're in your 40s and you still have that frat boy mentality, you're probably a loser in my book. But yeah, while I may think that people who play Dungeons and Dragons are a little too obsessed about Dungeons and Dragons, I wouldn't really consider them just as a whole, as a group, a bunch of losers. I think the loser phrase definitely comes from movies and that frat boy mentality archetype that maybe doesn't even really exist and never did, more than anything. And since I don't consider myself in the mindset of a frat boy by any means, I've never really thought of anybody being just this dismissive or easily dismissed loser archetype.
I have done the gods' bidding.
I'm going on a rant here, certainly for no real reason. But yeah, you want to be careful about insulting people and using words that can insult people, even if you're not intending to.
Did someone see me?
That twig won't do a thing.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and just evolve this.
Hard-headed as a unbelievable.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called 25 Layers of Pain, which looks like an ugly frustration platformer of no interest. It's free, English only, so I guess the price is right. You seem to be playing this pixely, like, I think girl in a skirt is what that is.
It won't be long now.
Next we have a game called Animals Fight, which obviously is an asset flip garbage game. 59 cents English only. They're comparing it to Bayonetta, and there's no comparison there. Here we have a game called Tolnik Village, which looks to me like it's some kind of Russian visual novel / RPG. $3.99 English, allegedly full audio. This does not look interesting for sure. I can see the beginning of the end, so I might be able to burn through all these games. Here we have the Northern Gate Special Agent, which obviously is going to be a no. 539 English only. Here we have a game called Terminal Illness, which apparently is a massive multiplayer according to the tags. 4.99 online PvP, online co-op, English only. Here we have Spacecraft Speed, which looks like nothing of interest. 15.19, that's really expensive, English only. Here we have a game, My Name is Velcro, which looks like it's a swinging platforming game, but it's all in darkness and definitely doesn't look polished and like a game worth playing. What's weird too is that there are elements here that you seem to not integrate with or work with, so I don't know if those gears are something you have to avoid or something you can swing on because of the blackness. I assume you're trying to avoid them because he's avoiding them. But yeah, apparently you can't touch the ground either. $15.29 is way too expensive for this type of game.
I'll head the vanguard. I'll head the vanguard.
Let's go and just win.
Looks like you won.
Yeah, and we are done.
Victory is exhilarating.
Which, if anything, this probably highlights why doing a solo missions in Shadowverse may be better. It just to get the daily quests done are easier. But it still doesn't really help you because you would want to get that daily mission of the temporary gyms, and that will always be play ranked or unranked multiplayer missions, not solo adventures. Let's see, we have Divyansh Kumar Sharma on the chat saying hi. Which, yeah, I'm about to wrap up, but always nice to see somebody on the chat. Anyways, I probably butchered your name, apologies. Here we have a game on Steam called King of the Universe, which is way too orange. There's way too much orange and brown going on there. $9.99 English only. That's a no. Here we have Terrorbane, an introduction mostly, which looks like an asset flip garbage game. It's free. English allegedly full audio in Italian, Japanese, and Chinese. Interesting to see Italian in that mix. Here we have Ubernatural, the video game prologue, which is a prologue, so we can just skip it. Overall, we probably would skip it anyways. It's free. English allegedly full audio. Here we have Vacation Adventures Cruise Director 3, a hidden object game from Casual Arts for $6.99, English only. Here we have GB Robber, which is again too much orange. Just a lot of orange going on here. I will probably point out that this looks like what you would do if you're trying to make something feel like a Game Boy game and make it work on a modern PC game. You zoom in a lot and you still have kind of blocky square platform and tiles for everything that's being depicted. And you are in color here, so I applaud that, but I would say you probably want to just take it to the next step and have it in full color instead of a color palette that really only has maybe 16 shades of orange happening. Like this is the mushy middle between a Game Boy inspired game that I don't want to play and a Game Boy inspired game that I might consider playing, and this leans still too much towards the idea of I wouldn't play it. It is $6.29 English only. Next we have Junkyard Simulator, which is mixed, which is a shame because some of these simulators might actually work. Although having an actual junkyard and simulating the experience of having a junkyard is way less interesting, I think, than having a car mechanic simulator game where you are repairing the cars. Yeah. This is on the following list. It's early access, $15.29. I don't know why it got relisted yet again when I already had it on the following list, but yeah, I'll leave it where it is on the following list. It probably won't ever get past its mixed reviews and then just get removed from the following list when I do a fall list cleanup. Here we have a game called Paradise on Steam, which looks like a survival asset flip game of no interest. $7.99, English only. Here we have a game called Increlution. Let's see. An incremental game about time management that takes inspiration from roguelike games. This is a lot of BS to explain away a game that is just a idle game and has no visuals to it. Early access, $2.99, English only. Definitely not the type of game I think most people would want to play, including me. Here we have a game called Inquire PT, which arguably at this point, somebody putting PT as playable teaser in their title, while that is trying to evoke the PT Silent Hills game, we kind of can't have the idea of PT be the sacred title that never gets used again, because it existed before the Silent Hills PT game came out, and it should exist after that fact too. Although maybe not, because playable teaser really isn't any more descriptive than just saying a prologue or a demo. This is $14.99, English and Turkish, and looks like an asset flip garbage game, so I'm going to say no to it. Here we have a game called No Tyrant, which seems like just a low polygon troll game. $5.99, English and Thai. This might also be a political statement. This might be actually assassinating some politician, like, that you're supposed to recognize in all yellow. I don't know who that would be, or if this is supposed to be somebody you recognize or not. Let's see. Next we have Lonely, Lustful, Arrogant, and Hateful, which that's quite a title. From what I can tell, though, it looks visually very unpolished. It's tagged as a adventure, puzzle, anime, logic, drama game. Yeah, it doesn't really feel like there's... Yeah, it feels like it's a video game that then has the interstitials that you would see in one of those reality TV shows. I assume interstitial is the right word there. The interviews in the middle. And the actual game seems to be just a bunch of ridiculous concepts. Yeah, this is one of these games that's trying to sell you very hard on being something when it really is nothing. $1.79, and that's quite the title to waste on such a low effort presentation. It would be probably very bad to make a reality TV show with a bunch of school-aged high schoolers or junior high school kids. I think they would say a lot of things and do a lot of things to embarrass themselves, and having a permanent record of that is not a good idea, and would come off very trashy. Frankly, it's already very sleazy and trashy when they have like young adults on things like Love Island, and those kinds of reality shows. You don't need to make it even more trashy. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bubble Poppet ASMR, which looks like it's probably just a simplistic idle puzzle game and nothing else. Yeah, and the title definitely makes it seem like it is a low effort game at 74 cents, English only. The visual polish, I will say though, if this was just a collection of puzzles where you clicked on something and it looked this well and they said we have 100 puzzles for you to invert whatever you click on, so you click here and it would invert all of the things around it, and you're trying to make it so everything is non-popped or popped, that would work nicely with this visual presentation. But I suspect there is just these puzzles down here and that's it, and it's not even really a puzzle, I bet. Next we have a game on Steam called Cat Jumper, which, yeah, doesn't really look like much of anything. Kind of a platformer where you play as a cat, which isn't a terrible idea, but I think you have to do more with it. It's just another game publisher that has made a logo with an anime avatar character. So you have to control the power and the angle to get the cat to jump from point A to point B, which pretty much means that you'll be failing a lot. And yeah, this is $2.99 English only. I think that's definitely going to be a no. Here we have a game called the Starlight Alliance. It's a weird art style, and I don't know if I believe there's really a game here. Yeah, I'll be generous and put this on the follow list, but I suspect there's not much to it as a game. $8.49, bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Dungeon Death Bell, which looks like it's some kind of strategy game. It's a little visually unpolished, looks like a little bit like MS Paint level graphics game, but I might be willing to overlook that. Seems like it has a lot of stats around it too, and that may be a good thing or that might be a bad thing. It's $10.19 English only, and that also feels pretty expensive, but I'll put it on the follow list and give it a chance. You still have about 20 games to look at. Here we have one called Midnight Protocol, which I thought there was a game already called Midnight Protocol. Maybe they talked about it and I've heard of it before, maybe. Looks kind of like a computer hacking game with keyboard only controls, which that may not be particularly fun to play. Although in all fairness, if you were doing hacking, keyboard only controls are about it. And you don't use the mouse a lot in console programming and things like that. $13.14 English, German, Russian, and simplified Chinese. I'll put this on the follow list. Although this may very well just be too complicated a game to really bother to show off. Although that would be a weird reason to not show off a game too, is because it's complicated. Here we have a game called Rydo Man, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter. It's a little too dark. It's a little too oddly fantasy for a game that dark. It's $8.99 English and Russian. I think I'm going to say no to that one. Here we have a game called The Last Will, which looks like a low polygon adventure story game. And I think this is the kind of art style that would have me reject a point and click adventure game. Don't want to immediately dismiss it. It's $1.99 English only, but I do feel like this probably is too short and won't ever have any relevancy. So I can give it a faultless, but I bet it never gets 30 reviews. Next we have Rebel Inc. Escalation 1.1 launch, which is to say that it is out of early access. This is from the developer of Plague Inc. And gets away from trying to make a plague that takes over the entire world, and then takes some of those gameplay mechanics and turns it into political military strategy simulation that seems to be a little bit more zoomed in compared to Plague Inc., which was just all of the world. And takes it in a different direction. Regardless, it is very positive. It doesn't need to be on the fault list anymore. It can just go on the wish list. And yeah, whenever I get around to playing it, yeah, I can get the bundle and save a few more pennies on it. Yeah. Arguably, if you were to believe that Plague Inc. from Endemic Creations hinted at what could happen in a place like COVID, which they had to update it. It's from February 18th, 2016 to include this cure concept, because they weren't intentionally trying to make Plague Inc. be a simulator that showed off what was going to happen. It was supposed to be fantasy and kind of unbelievable. In 2016, playing Plague Inc., you said, oh yeah, this is not really realistic, and that the numbers are all wrong, and a plague would never be able to evolve and spread across the world and potentially eliminate 100% of the human population, which that's still a problem with Plague Inc. Evolved, is that you have to kill every single human on the planet, which is not realistic. But they've been constantly updating it. You can see 94% of people who play Plague Inc. are happy with it. I would highly recommend, even in the middle of the pandemic, if you can bear it, to play Plague Inc. Evolved. But I would also definitely understand if you didn't want to, since you are playing from the perspective of the plague itself trying to kill humanity. But yeah, Endemic Creations as a developer has hit off on 2 successes. It hasn't magically turned them into a AAA game developer over the course of like 5 years or anything like that, and arguably that's the thing we'd like to see happen more, is that a company succeeds with a small indie game and then they get funding from publishers to make more games and scale up and hire more people and grow their company at that point, because they're big AAA game developers. They're kind of stagnant. They can open a whole nother facility. Sure, you can have Gearbox Montreal, but is Gearbox Montreal going to come out with a new concept of a game or a new gameplay style that is completely out of line and different from Borderlands? No. Gearbox Montreal is almost certainly going to make something that is a lot like Borderlands. It's going to be a first-person shooter. It's going to have that same feel. So the idea of scaling up an established AAA developer is not as appealing as potentially as scaling up an indie company that will take bigger risks and try something different. Moving on, we have this Blood Red Fist game, which looks like it's pretty much just a low-effort beat-em-up game. $2.99 English only. I don't even know if it really is a beat-em-up game as much as it is a simulation game. It seems like there's a lot of screenshots here where you're not doing much of anything. Here we have a game all in Chinese characters, which looks like it's a simplistic Chinese ball rolling game, if there actually is a finished project here at all. Finished product here. It's free, it's Chinese only. It says it takes 30 minutes to play. Here we have a game called Red Ship, which is just a gym matching game. $9.99. That's way too expensive. English only. Here we have Old Stories Fireheart, which looks like really just a kind of minimalistic RPG game. Nothing really impressive here. Minimalism and RPG games do not work together as concepts. $11.99 English only. Minimalism only works in a few styles of games. Here we have Death in the Family, which looks like an asset flip horror game. Yeah, nothing really of interest there. Didn't even make it through all the screenshots. $3.99 English Russian. That's going to be a no. Here we have SCP Foundation ITTLG. What does that stand for? Chapter 1. Visual novel about SCP-105 and SOP-105B. Yeah. The obsession around SCP has pretty much completely died off. And so making a visual novel around that seems kind of silly. And having what is at least anime inspired characters seems kind of ridiculous. But in all fairness, if a Japanese company was going to take the concepts and try to Japanify and animeify SCP, they probably could do a pretty good job around it, or at least use it in the same way that Control used SCP as a general idea and then did their own thing. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but almost certainly no. $1.49 English, allegedly full audio, no Japanese support either. So, in a lot of ways, this is probably asset flips more than anything. Somebody wanted to make an SCP game and couldn't find any characters to use and couldn't draw things themselves. Even the backgrounds don't really seem to synchronize with the foreground characters. Even the photo here doesn't really connect. Next we have Negative Nancy. Interactive sitcom where you can only say no or nothing at all. Interesting. Which I guess that might be a fun general idea of just like you can only say no. So I'll put this on the follow list and see if they can actually do anything with that. $12.74 is way too expensive though. English only. I bet this never gets reviewed. So yeah. It seems like they've written a whole bunch of scenarios where all you can do is say no or say nothing. And it seems like it's just gonna get worse and worse as it goes along. It's also very weird this guy has pink hair. Moving on, we have Operation Dogfight, which looks like a dogfighting game where you actually play as dogs, it seems like. Not a bad idea. There's a Snoopy dogfighting game, or yeah, Snoopy and the Red Baron dogfighting game that came out many years ago. This is free, English only. That's really cheap. It requires a controller. That does not look bad by any means. Here we have a game called Polyslime, which does look bad. It's $4.99, English only. We can say no to that. And we have Doctor Who, The Edge of Reality, which this must have been an exclusive on the Epic Games Store because I'm fairly certain this had come out before. This might be a VR game, and so it was exclusive to Oculus Rift. Nope. If anything, I imagine they're probably just trying to get any Doctor Who games out that include the new female Doctor Who as quickly as possible because they're moving on to the next Doctor who again may be female. There's a decent chance of that. But yeah, they're probably trying to get rid of the Jodie Whittaker Doctor Who games as quickly as possible. These Doctor Who games, I've yet to see a lot of them well received, so it'd be nice if this was good. I don't care if it's Jodie Whittaker or Matt Smith or any of the other Doctors really in the video game. I just want to see them do better at making Doctor Who games because there should be Doctor Who games out there. It makes so much sense to just take a general storyline that would be from a Doctor Who episode or make a video game based on a previous Doctor Who episode. There's plenty of them to potentially think about doing that. $24.99 though is fairly expensive, and that tends to be the problem, is that because you have this license, the games become exorbitantly too expensive for what they're offering. But yeah, we'll put that on the fall list. Next we have Gladiator Guild Manager, which a management game does not appeal to me, even though the visuals here actually look fairly interesting. So it kind of sucks, because it kind of feels like there's something here. In fact, I'm willing to put this on the fall list, even though I tend to not want to play management games. This feels more like an auto battle or something kind of like auto chess. It doesn't feel like you're just running a bunch of numbers into a spreadsheet. That's the main thing. $8.99, whole bunch of languages being supported here. Yeah, we'll give that a follow. See, next we have a game that's all Asian letters. Looks like it's a Chinese mobile game being ported to Steam. Take note, we haven't seen too many adult games today, so there still seems like there will be some times when just adult games are not listed on Steam and they're getting either bundled together for one reason or another to come out on Fridays. This is Chinese only with in-app purchases, free to play. Got about 4 more games to cover. The Jackbox Party Pack 8 is out. If you have friends to play with, Jackbox Party Pack 8 makes a lot of sense, particularly right now. So I'll put that on the follow list. $26.99 English full audio. I do have some of the Jackbox content, but I can't really cover it, so I basically just purchased it to support them, or I was gifted it. I don't think I was gifted it. I think I did just buy some thinking I would be able to cover more of the games, but they don't have single player modes, and I didn't really realize that. Here we have a game called Hoop and Loop, which definitely does not look like anything worth playing. It's also way too zoomed in. It looks like it's a VR thing for free. English only. As a VR game, since you'd be desperately always looking for more content in VR, I see the concept here, but there's just no polish at all. Like, it's not even a circle. It's this odd hexagonal image. Like, very, very low polygon for no reason. So I'm going to say no to that. Next we have Monkey King Simulator, which obviously is going to be a Chinese game. Chapter Huaguo Mountain. I probably totally mispronounced that. $1.79 Chinese only. And then our final game is another Chinese game. I had a few of them, but nowhere as much as we have in that past. They're slowing down for sure, as far as the Chinese games. This again looks like a mobile phone game just being ported to Steam. $15.99, Chinese only. Alright. So then that leaves me in a position, since we started really late, and it is very late in the evening now, we probably won't have too much new news to cover, and then we'll be done. According to Gamatsu, Ninjala downloads have topped 8 million, so Ninjala doing a lot better than I thought it was, considering as nobody has really been talking about it. Aeon Must Die is now available on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. Let's see. Doctor Who Edge of Reality is on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. Lotus Reverie First Nexus is now available on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. Larry Herb, Major Nelson, has changed his Twitter icon to an Xbox logo that looks weird, frankly. Let's just show this. Like, I don't recognize this logo. It looks weird. So maybe they're testing out, teasing a new logo. It's not good by any means. Also kind of questionable as to why Major Nelson is tweeting out games being available now. Other games that are available are Rift Breakers for the Xbox Series X and S, MXGP 2021 on Xbox One and Series X and S. Bassmaster Fishing 2022 for Xbox One and Series X and S. You don't really need to say Series X and S, though. You can just say Xbox Series, because there's been 0 games that have only worked on like the Xbox Series X and don't work on the S. I don't think they would allow that to actually occur. Scrolling down my Twitter feed and just checking to see if there's anything else worth mentioning. Sorry if I'm going quiet. Should be done fairly quickly, considering as there almost certainly isn't any real new news that happened in the last 3-4 hours. Let's see. Guess one more tab. Yeah. So yeah, Gamatsu, being a Japanese website, has some new news, and that's it. This Tetsudo Nippon Rosen Taibai Sengi Tetsudo Dohin has been announced for Switch, which this definitely feels like this is just a collection of Japanese rail simulators, train simulators. And then Honkai Third Impact for PC is coming to Steam in October. Currently it is only available on the official website, which, okay. I don't think Honkai Third Impact, though, will play any better on PC and on Steam than it does on the mobile game, which is to say it's going to be full of like microtransactions and things like that really limit the appeal of the game, and frankly the game itself is not really that appealing. Alright, well, I'm mostly happy with my new internet service provider. The only thing is that some of the Steam pages did seem like they were taking a little bit longer to load than they probably should, and so I'm still working on that, but Everything else seems to be working fine. We've had 0 dropped frames in total. That's going to be it for this stream. Again, I guess I should just apologize for starting so late, but heck, that's when I woke up. So either you get a late night stream or you get no stream. So those are really the only 2 options. Yeah, that's it for this stream though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.